I'd like to call the Finance Audit Budget Committee for Monday, November 21st, 2022 to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item is adoption of the agenda. Need a
Romano
motion to
adopts
adopt.
the agenda.
Support Wallace.
Made by Romano, supported by Wallace. Any discussions? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, next item is approval of minutes for the Joint Health and Human Services and Finance Audit and Budget Committee meeting minutes dated November 14th, 2022. Need a motion to approve.
So moved, Paul.
Support Van Sickle.
Made by Ha, supported by Van Sickle. Any corrections, commissioners? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, next item is public participation. This is the first opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on an item which is on today's agenda. There will also be a second opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak on any issue. Would anyone from the public like to speak? Please come to the mic.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Arnott-Brykes, Director of Facilities at 44900 Vic Wirtz Drive in Clinton Township. I'm speaking under public participation in response to item 9B in today's agenda relative to proposed budget amendment impacting the Facilities and Operations operating budget. In particular, to a $250,000 reduction in supplies and services and a $250,000 reduction in the repairs and maintenance line items. As you are aware, Facilities and Operations is responsible for the operations and maintenance of approximately 1.7 million square feet of buildings plus grounds. Just like you as a homeowner, you are seeing increases in costs relative to home repairs and services. We are also experiencing these increases. The major increase we requested under supplies and services was in the category of grounds care. We are requesting additional funding to address the downtown complex, and in particular the area between the county and court building where the raised planter beds have deteriorated. We are also going to have to address the court building precast, and that is due to a defect in the original construction. We did not have that expense in 2022, but we will have that expense in 2023. We also have a major category that I asked for additional funding was in repairs and maintenance. In particular, we have a roof or a section of roof to repair or replace at the Verkulen building. The estimate for this roof is between $740,000 to $824,000. And we actually think that estimate is a little low and does not take into consideration current costs. We believe it is extremely important to maintain the assets of the county, and I am requesting your support in not decreasing the Facilities and Operations budget as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak?
Hi, my name is Sandy Wilson. I'm the Deputy Director of IT out of 117 North Groesbeck in Mount Clemens. I am here requesting to not decrease the budget for the IT. There was 2 proposed items. One is for our maintenance and repair of a reduction of $400,000. Just based on our current year alone of 22, Our September remaining budget is $112,000. There isn't a $400,000 delta for us to give up for next year. We have a very minimal increase from next year based on new maintenance that's coming in and just general increases. So we request that that stays the same. As for contracting services, that was requested to be reduced by $100,000. We're right now with a portion of that budget at $50,000 remaining for the current year. And again, I still have 3 months to get through. So we're still reconciling the other part of the budget, but we run very tight in these budget areas. I know 20 and 21 showed some different gaps, but that was very COVID related. We were able to take some expenses and offset those by CARES Act. We no longer have those options. So I request that those funds stay as submitted. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak?
Good afternoon. My name's Chief Jeff Randazzo. I'm the Director of Macomb County Animal Control, and I'm up here today to request that there not be a decrease in personnel at the Macomb County Animal Control. Specifically, the Animal Control Operations Manager position. This is a position that was funded, and then during 2020, during the pandemic, it had vacated. So when there was going to be some cuts, we decided to unfund it in case there was funding that was needed elsewhere that could be allocated. And now in this coming January in 23, it'll be 3 years. So all that I was requesting was that we please refund it. And when we think of that position, something that's important to think of specifically with a new building coming, our community outreach, that position specifically writes grants. And not only does it write grants for life-saving programs such as TNR, pet retention, and other important grants, however, it could write for capital funding. But unfortunately, I don't have time. I've been, for the last 3 years, writing the grants myself where I have time. I'm also filling out on the road because we're short deputies. Today, we have 2 deputies. Because other people are sick, we're short some positions, and we have them in St. Clair Shores and Roseville because that is the only 2 cities that pay 100% of that funding. So I am in the north. I just got off the road, came here so I could be here at this meeting because it's very important to me. But I'm filling in where I can with the vet techs, the kennel techs, the deputies inside. So I unfortunately do not have time to be writing grants, although I am, and also building and collaborating with our communities, right? So we service 21 communities, and we service 13 law enforcement agencies, including our own sheriff's department. And I'm trying my best the last 3 years to make sure that we're maintaining that, but unfortunately, I can't continue that. And so I did a report with IT over the last 6 months. We have the reports here for you if you need them. But we've taken 111 calls just to our dispatch center, not to Comtech, but our dispatch center at Macomb County Animal Control. And in the last year, we've taken in 2,400 animals. So that's on the road, in the building. Those same dispatchers are doing adoptions. Just at our own building, we returned 708 animals to their owners through the front door of that building.
You have 30 seconds.
So I'm just trying to show you it's extremely busy. It's a very important position. It was there before. It wasn't like I'm asking to have it recreated. I'm just asking for it to be refunded, please. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak?
Hello, Commissioners. Ernest Colby, Director of Macomb Community Actions Department in the county. I wanted to provide you some context today on item 22 on today's proposed budget. There weren't any questions about it when we had our committee hearing, so I wanted to provide some extra context around the request for this administrative coordinator personnel that you're looking to decrease. Right now, today, in Macomb Community Action, there is one administrative coordinator shared between our Community Development Division and our Weatherization Division. As you've heard me come before this board time and again,
we were up to the 6th substantial amendment to our community development plan this year. So you know there's a lot of work that goes into each of these divisions. What you might not know is that each of them are increasing drastically. The weatherization division, I know I mentioned to you the bipartisan infrastructure law, that is going to double our weatherization services fund. That's starting next year. And the same with community development. As you know, the community development has up to 15 years of monitoring and reporting requirements to HUD and MISHDA. Now, we are going to seek to get these within the grants that they service, but the timeliness of this need is a business imperative. We are managing more funds than ever for more resident services than ever, both in our weatherization department and our community development department, and they're down to sharing one position between the two. So that is the context of requesting this position, is we are going to seek to get that within the grant in the future years. So if next year it's not in there, come back to me, let me know about it. For this year, we're looking to get that $77,000 so that each of those divisions can have one administrative coordinator dedicated to them to help with the financial monitoring and grant reporting that all of those funds require. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak?
Good morning, Commissioner, or good afternoon, Commissioners. How are you doing? Andy McKinnon. I live in Harrison Township. I also work for the Executive's Office. I'm just wanting to comment on Agenda Item 11A, I believe, the resolution. I haven't had a chance to see that resolution yet on setting assistant prosecutors' numbers and salaries, I believe. We are continuing to negotiate with our APA unit, so we don't have those salaries finalized at this time. It seems a little premature. I'm not entirely certain what that resolution is, just because I have not seen it yet. We can always work to better improve communication. I know that's something that I'm always working on. I'm sure that it was an oversight, but I just would like to have the opportunity to review it so that we could cogently comment on it prior to it being considered by this board. Thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else from the public?
Afternoon, Commissioners. Vicki Wolber, Interim H&CS Director. Also here to speak about item 9B and in particular to the MSUE decrease. Ed Scott could not make it here today, so I will try to speak to the item, obviously not as well as Ed. But just to add a little clarity to the request for this position, MSUE programs serve many people within the county with the purpose of providing education, exposure, and in many instances that hand up to people that we've talked about a lot in different discussions within the board. Just some notable programs and some of those tie-ins. Obviously, one of the most popular is the 4-H program. And a lot of people in the northern end of the county take advantage of that program, but there's also some innovative partnerships that are trying to be created with that program, and obviously the outreach to people who, don't have that exposure. So if you look at the southern end of the county, don't have those farming opportunities maybe close by, 4-H is an opportunity for them to go and learn how to ride a horse. Learn how to do farming that they may not get within their own community. It should be also noted that MSUE works closely with animal control on some of their programmings, and there's some interdependency, if you will, between those departments and programs that they do offer or can offer. There is the Master Gardener program, probably one of the most successful within the county. Just want to make a comment there and how it interacts with MCA and the food program through Master Gardeners and other community organizations. There is a small farming community that provides all of the fresh produce and only the fresh produce to MCA that you see at our food pantries, and that is supported through MSUE and their Master Gardener practitioners. Lastly, I'll speak to the housing and training programs. They offer many educational opportunities to individuals who are struggling with housing, any of their utility bills, financial assistance. They also work with Michigan Works and their programs as well for employment and training opportunities. So it's not just MSUE working on their own or the other departments. They actually form nice collaboratives And lastly, I know Ed talked about numbers, but with COVID, like many departments, huge increase in their online services and programming, as well as getting back into that demand for in-person programming as well. So by having an additional county position within the clerical support staff would really help them out greatly to continue those programs and the outreaches that is going on and the great work that they're already doing. So thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Next item is the public hearing relative to the proposed budgets for the general fund, certain special revenue and enterprise funds, and the debt service fund for the fiscal years ending September 30th, 2023 and December 31st, 2023. Call from the public. I believe we need, do we need a motion? I believe it's just a open public, correct, staff? So, would anyone from the public like to speak in regards to this item? You have 3 minutes. Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the public, we will close that portion of the agenda. And next item is presentations. 7A, this is Finance Department 2022 third quarter fiscal report. I need a motion to receive and file.
Support Van Sickle.
Made by Farrington, supported by Van Sickle.
Mr. Chair, point of order real quick. I think we need a receive and file vote on the public hearing, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that correct? Okay, I'll take a motion for 6A to receive and file.
I'll make that motion.
Made by Haw, supported by Romano. Okay, please vote.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay. Now I need a motion to receive and file. I already have one, I believe, made by Farrington, supported by Van Sickle. Is that correct? Okay. Steve, you have the floor.
As usual, I keep my comments brief. I guess I'll limit it to say that the budget in the general fund is trending favorably, and if anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them now, and if I can, I'll get back with you.
Short and sweet today, Steve.
There's other business on the agenda.
We thank you for that. One question I did have in regards to the third quarter, I know in public participation in regards to IT, we did look at some of the leftover funds relative to this quarterly report, and we're showing in repairs and maintenance a little over $1 million, and in contract services a little over $400,000 per your report.
So I think Sandy was here last week with another set of quarterly adjustments. I looked this morning in repairs and maintenance. I think they're 84% spent through today.
Okay.
So that, I expect that to be pretty much on target. You'll notice also through the operating expenses that departments appear to be somewhat significantly under budget. That's because we haven't charged out that indirect cost allocation yet. That's a big chunk of everybody's money.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, next item is department recommendations. This is contract with LinkedIn Corporation for LinkedIn Learning Hub for Government. This is a total of 3-year cost of $140,850. Annual cost of $46,950. Need a motion to recommend this to full board.
Motion by Romano.
Made by Romano, supported by Nard. And Sandy, did you want to speak to this?
Good afternoon again. Yep, what we'd like to do is propose for the Workday Learning module. There is a course catalog component through Discovery we identified it needed to be added to the program. So there was a review and Discovery with 5 different companies that have course catalogs. The one that was selected was LinkedIn Learning. It was the cheapest at the $46,950. That's the annual cost. We did have $280,000 as a contingency fund for these types of unknown activities, so that's where the funding will come from. So I respectfully add you a request that you approve this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy, I have a quick question. We didn't get the bidding. I know that this was bid out with the other, you said 3 other bids?
In this particular one, it was, I'll say just a discovery. It really wasn't at a bid for these
Okay.
5.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, next item is the 2023 budget amendments. 9A, this is creation of a lake and river fund for $1 million. I need a motion to recommend this to full board.
Motion
or-
to recommend to full board. Zinner.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. Supported by Farrington. Commissioner Zinner? You're the motion maker. Did you want to speak on this?
Yes, thank you. There have been, we've discussed a lot of this before. There used to be a lake and river cleanup fund. We're trying to get back to that. This would be this would be a $500,000 match, $500,000 from our budget and $500,000 match to make them, and so we're hoping for support for that because it affects our drinking water. That's the whole thing. Where's our health coming from? There's a lot of information about algae, E. coli. We were just at the Tri-County Summit. That was one of the major concerns that was brought up. And it's not even just in our area. It's coming from the whole state of Michigan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. First we have on the list is Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. We have no attachments. We don't even have a recommended motion. The last time this came up, there were a whole lot of questions because as the discussion progressed, some commissioners thought it would be used for litigation against Oakland County. Other commissioners thought it would be used for the river. Others thought it would be used to clean up the muck that's in front of homes in Harrison Township. And my understanding was there was going to be a clarification of all that and it was going to be brought back to us. Instead, it's in front of us with a motion with no attachments, and she just said it's $500,000 and a $500,000 match. We don't even have that in here. The match is from? Who's the match from?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kleinfeld. That was supposed to come up later in the meeting, which I'm sorry I was ahead of that here.
It's going to come up later in the meeting. We're voting on it right now. We don't have anything. We don't have what budget line it's going into, who's going to administer it. I am in favor of doing this. But if administration brought this forward for $1 million expenditure with zero information and zero attachments, we'd hang them out to dry. If we're going to expect other people to give the proper information, we ought to expect it of ourselves. And my understanding, because I voted to forward it on, my understanding was, oh, we're going to get you all that information. And I have nothing in here. And later on in the meeting, after this vote, you're going to talk to me about a match. Is that my understanding? There's a creation of the river fund. There's the budget amendments. general appropriation, prosecuting attorney. Where's the match from? And when are you going to discuss it?
Chair, shall I go on?
Yep, you can certainly reply. I can also garnish some information as well if you like.
What has come forward is that this is going to go under Candace Miller's genre of, I can't think of it. I lost her area. Candace Miller is going to be in charge of this. This area is going to go under Candace Miller, Public Works. And if we can come up with $500,000, she can, for grants, she expects to be able to match $500,000. If that's approved.
Is this $1 million vote or is it a $500,000 vote?
Well, she's expecting to be able to match $500,000.
I don't even know, I'm sorry, I don't even know what the motion is. There was a so move in support, and we have no attachments and no recommended motion. I don't even know what the motion is that's on the floor. If somebody could spell out the motion that's on the floor, I would appreciate it.
Commissioner, I think maybe what we could do here is, it looks like there are budget amendments here on the next item that probably will clarify some of your questions that Commissioner Zinner can talk a little bit more in depth about.
That's fine, but is this motion for 500,000? Is it for $1 million? What is it for?
Well, this was just passed on to my board as an agenda item, so that's why it's on the agenda today. And obviously, we're working on a budget, so I think it was fair to put it on today's agenda to have the discussion. But relative to the budget amendments that are going to happen here, I think it's kind of a collective amendment altogether.
Okay, I'm going to say this to all the chairs. My time is short, but this happened last week. Chairs just throwing things on their agenda without doing the job of chair to make sure the proper information is in our thing. If you want to be chairs of committee, there's work involved in that. And I think there's a responsibility of the chairs that are going to chair committees for the rest of this year and next year to make sure there's information in here when we're making a decision and not just throwing things on because people request it. I'll relinquish the floor.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Don't much know how to follow that. Part of my question was, how did this become a separate agenda item? I think you answered that. Is this item 19 on our proposed budget amendment list? Appropriation $1 million?
Yes, that would be correct.
So, and I will say this, as chair of one of the committees, I do review every agenda, and I know you've been deluged, Joe, with all of the requests that have come in from all of the various commissioners on amendments and such. It was just, I didn't understand why this was a unique, separate situation in addition to the other 23 that we have to deal with here. I'm sure you thought there was going to be far more explanation on it, and it didn't come, quite frankly. So I have no idea what this is, and I remembered we had the discussion on it. We also discussed increasing the role with the Public Works Department. We also discussed how to fund something like this when there's so many Public Works responsibilities and requests. Well, we heard, what, $40 million worth from our Public Works Commissioners, so I don't know how that falls within the scope or outside of that scope, but I'm anxious to hear when we get to line item 19, the background and the whys and the wherefores. So thank you.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. So this item was forwarded to us from October 25th to the Finance and Committee. So it's not a surprise. I'm not sure why you guys are talking like you don't know what this item is. We all know what it is. Candace came before us, did the presentation, and And don't get me wrong, I want to take care of our lakes and rivers. I think that's important, especially as we try to maintain it for future generations. One thing that really stood out to me when Commissioner Miller was here was that, you know, the importance of cleaning up these rivers is for kayakers who are, you know, taking advantage of the river and doing outdoor activities. But realistically, this $1 million is not going to go very far. It's really just a drop in the bucket. This item was introduced to us 2 weeks before an election, and I kind of want to say that this could have been a political stunt, because this is a problem that has been in existence for years now. We had Channel 4 come and do a coverage on it. I'm just wondering why we're just now talking about it. If it really was an issue, this could have been a discussion we had a year ago. And I live right on the Red Run. I never want to roll down my window when I drive home because I know what that smells like. That's in my neighborhood. And so when I said that, you know, Oakland County dumping on us and us not having clean water and air is a human rights issue, because our children deserve to be able to be outside and play and have clean water and fresh air, that's really important. But for us to create this $1 million river fund is not the solution. It's not going to be the solution. And if we're looking at, if I, as a mom with 4 children, if I'm looking at how we should fund our services, I'm going to tell you right now that food comes first. Before I take my kids kayaking, I want to make sure I have food on the table for my children. That comes first. So who's to say that any one of us can't come before us and say, hey, I want to create $1 million fund because I want to do this, I want to address this problem. But I don't think this is the way to go. We have to hold Oakland County accountable, and we need to find a different solution to help us clean our lakes and rivers. I don't think this is it. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. 2 things. One, I guess I'm looking at, if I understand logistically, we have to, this does not allocate $1 million or even the $500,000. It creates the fund so that when we vote later on, whether we approve or not, it's another thing, but we have to create the fund so that if it passes, we can provide the monies into that fund. So this is not a vote to give the $1 million or the $500,000. It's to just create a fund. Why there's $1 million attachment on the verbiage, I don't know. That's my understanding. If that's not a good enough understanding, I perfectly understand that detail is needed, and I'd be more than happy to do a motion to table it until my meeting tomorrow so the proper documentation can be provided if that's more appropriate. But it's my understanding the fund has to be created so that the monies can be allocated into the fund if it were to pass. And I'm more than open to hear from others if that's the case.
I'm sorry, Chair, may I do a point of order? I heard what he said, but the agenda item has the $1 million on it, and we don't have a written motion, so I don't think it's clear. Thank you.
Chair Brown.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate what Commissioner Farrington just said, and seems appropriate that we table this till his committee meeting tomorrow, and then we're going to go deal with the items in the next budget that'll deal with the funding of this issue anyway. So I think that support the Commissioner's recommendation.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. When Candace mentioned the kayakers, I thought, well, that's nice. But that's not where my issue, is. My issue is cleanliness and health, and that's drinking water. And yes, the people say, well, we have things to clean our water and all that. Well, that's why do people use Britas? Why do they have water cleaners in their house? Why do they have systems? Because almost everybody knows that there's a problem. And when you go physically see all that stuff, and you've seen the pictures that I brought, that's just a few. That's not the whole thing. And that is the real issue. That's the real problem. And however much money, if that passes, whatever money, as the chair had brought up, there used to be this, and there was always, to me, I thought it was a good idea because it would be something that would always be something that would be picking away at something. $1 million is not a lot of money for stuff like that. But there are areas right now where you could take $500,000 and clean them up for the future. So that's my view on it. Doug Martz, who started this cleanup 30 years ago, called me regularly and says, "What's happening, Barb?" He's in Florida right now. What's going on now? Mike from that area, from the Cove, citizens that had seen that in the paper say, "Are you the water person?" And I said, "Well, I'm one of the water people." People are very concerned about the water. I can't tell you. Fishermen, they've been bringing this up to me for years. The 2 years I've been in this, they say, well, "What about the water? I can't use my fishing holes anymore." So it's not about just having a nice, indulgent time on the water. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, Steve, you want to add some context to this?
I'm trying to gain context or gather context,
Okay.
actually, because I'm hearing two different things. And so, on one hand, what I am hearing that there's a desire to add money to the county at-large drain line item in the non-departmental department. It's currently at $100,000, and there's $50,000 of local match revenue built into that same department. So one thing I'm hearing is that would be the board's desire, or the proposal would be to increase that to $1 million with a $500,000 local offset revenue. And that program has been operating for a few years now. Public Works Office will identify a project, secure local commitment for 50%, and then when that project's done, bills are submitted through my office and we reimburse. And then what I heard from Commissioner Farrington was that maybe this was going to be a sinking fund of some sort, or we'd put $1 million aside and Public Works Office would spend it down, and, you know, maybe we would replenish it or not replenish it. So I'm just trying to, whatever it happens, I'm just trying to gather context of what the intentions of the board are. Or if that $1 million was a one-time thing and we go back to 100 or 200,000 in future years, or is the intention to be $1 million a year, that sort of thing. So just wanted to get, you know, from my perspective, let you know what I'm thinking. So just for food for thought.
So, to my understanding, it is supposed to stay within the existing budget, like you had said, with relative to the drain funds. We can certainly talk about this even more tomorrow at Commissioner Farrington's committee. What I'd really like to do is get to the amendments, because that may or may not even need to be discussed tomorrow.
So when I saw this item as a separate line item or a separate agenda item, I thought it was an additional $1 million. And it sounds like it's just increasing.
As that's
what
how
we
it would
have.
look like, but obviously taking this from the previous committee and putting it on the agenda, it was taken as it was put on that agenda and put on my agenda.
Yeah.
So I think maybe this is more of a discussionary purposes, but I think what we'll do at this point, who was the motion maker? Was Commissioner Zinner the motion maker? Okay, could you amend your motion to send to the Public Services Committee tomorrow, where we'll have more time to discuss it?
Yes, I would like to amend my motion for the River and Lake Fund. Is that what? I don't
And who supported that initial motion?
I did, Chair, and if we're going to do it, I asked staff that we have all the proper documentation on what the detail is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Any questions on that? Commissioner Kleinfeld, I have you on the board. Would you like to speak?
I asked to speak again, yeah. Okay, so if we're going to do that, what Commissioner Miller talked about was different than what Commissioner Zinner talked about. And so it's the first thing that we need to know as commissioners before making a decision tomorrow is whose decision is it how that money is spent. Because I think I saw the video from Commissioner Zinner, and she was saying very specific things about how the money was going to be spent, which is different than what Commissioner Miller was saying. Who's the administrator that makes that determination? I'm not opposed to starting the process of cleaning things up, but I don't want commissioners to be thinking that they have $1 million to clean up specific areas if it is indeed Commissioner Miller's decision how the money is going to be spent. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Excuse me, Chair, we're voting on moving this till tomorrow?
Correct.
Thank you.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, next item is the proposed fiscal year 2023 recommended budget amendments. So basically how we're going to do this, everyone is looking at 13 budget amendments here that have been submitted to the board office by specific commissioners. We're going to go through these individually and vote them individually.
Point of order, Chair, I believe that's 23.
Did I, 23? Oh, 23, 13 commissioners.
We went from lakes to rivers to oceans on the last one.
Commissioner Hall, you didn't flip the page. So we're going to go through these individually and take them that way. Obviously, we have a running total here. And then after we get through the 23, I will ask if there are any additional amendments. If anyone wants to bring up an additional amendment, I will take them at that point. Then this will then be forwarded. The motion is going to be the motion to amend the 2023 proposed budget. And we're going to do these individually, and then they will supersede and go into the ordinance will then be forwarded to the full board. So similar to what we did last year, they'll be done individually. Are there any questions before we start?
Will I be adjusting any of the things that I was supposed to be speaking on?
This is what we received, so these would be the numbers that, unless you want to change the actual number, but these are the numbers that were.
I just wanted to be clear.
Yep. Okay. Number one, this is a decrease in personnel for the animal control. I'll make the motion since my name is there. Okay, so motion made by Sabatini, supported by Farrington. So in regards to this budget amendment, the decrease is for $84,200 to reduce personnel or the actual requests from the animal control for an operations manager. Reason for this adjustment specifically is relative to a brand new animal shelter that we are proposing to build. Next year we have an $85,000 assessment that's going to happen. At that point, I think once we have all the information relative to the assessment and what the needs are, not saying that I'm specifically against this personnel in general, it's just I think what we need to do is we need to have an assessment and see what the needs are of the animal control, because this may be 2 individuals that we may need for this facility. I think at this point, I think we're putting the cart ahead of the horse. I'd rather have the assessment done, see what our true needs are, and if a budget amendment does need to be made at a later date, that certainly can happen during the course of the year, or it can be brought up again at the next budget cycle. Any questions? Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I'm not going to speak on every one of these. I'm going to make some general comments now, and then if there's one I really feel I should speak on, but generally speaking with regard to these amendments. There are a couple things that have been bothering me about the process. We used to have meetings before the meetings where any commissioner that wanted to could come in and meet with the finance and go through all the things that were on the agenda. That went away. Today, I came in early because I had a different appointment up here in Mount Clemens, so I came up here. I pulled into the parking lot over an hour early, and there were a whole lot of commissioners here. They were in a closed room in the back having a discussion. We were not all invited to that party. And we started with this group of commissioners and this chair, one team, one mission, one team, one mission. It's been said to me 100 times, but we're not all invited to the team meetings. And now I look at the budget amendments and I notice something very interesting. All the increases are in budgets of county-wides that are Republican. All of the decreases are in budgets of the county executive that's a Democrat. I don't know if that's a coincidence, but I do know I've talked to fellow Democratic commissioners that aren't invited into the party in the back room that takes place, where all these budget discussions are had. This is not how we used to do things. And I'm going to tell you something with regard to these. It looks like what we did was, oh, we have these big ticket items we want to do, but we want to present a balanced budget. So we're going to gut departments in the county exec's office to achieve it. And I'm sorry, I'm not qualified to know, but I sure know one thing. We all sat up here when Lynn got a proclamation and told her how much we trusted her and how much information she provides and how much we know that when she needs something, she can back it up. And here we are just gutting her department to the tune of $500,000. I'm blown away by that. Commissioner said of all of the department heads, they trust her more than anybody. And just boom, in one swoop, $500,000. Maybe that's to cover the $1 million, which is an honorable thing. But I don't think that's the way that we should do business. So I'm going to be voting no. I think our role is if we really want to do something like the Martha T. Berry, everybody has said we want to save Martha T. Berry. I think our role is that. Our role is to make sure there are no mistakes in the budget. I don't think our role is to decide which department head knows what they need and don't need. This isn't how we should do business. And it certainly isn't heading into the new year with a great relationship between not just the county exec, but all these department heads we're gutting and us. So I didn't get the benefit of the discussions in the back room, and I won't be voting yes on most of these. Thank you.
Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. Next time I'm going to get my name in front of Commissioner Kleinfeld's. I don't know how to do that yet. So what you're proposing here, Commissioner Sabatini, is giving the animal control chief the opportunity, once the new complex is being built, to come back and reassess the needs, which could even be greater than the one that he's asking for, but leaving that door open. Am I understanding that?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all I needed.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I'm not going to comment on the animal control item. There were some inflammatory comments made by Commissioner of insinuation of closed-door meetings against the Open Meetings Act. It couldn't be further from the truth. I want that on record. I also came in an hour early. There was a couple of commissioners meeting. Anyone could have walked into that room, and it was in a smaller room. Because we ran out of space, we moved to the conference room. Again, the door is open. People just walked in. No one was invited. There was no invitation. Anyone on either side of the aisle could have came into that meeting. We reached the number of 6 at that point, so we didn't affect the Open Meetings Act. We closed the door to make sure no one else joined us, so we did do everything properly. And that was the only reason the door is closed, because after a amount of time, people just started wandering in asking about the budget. So I wanted to make sure that that is clear for all those involved, because I personally take those insinuations that were very incorrect to heart, and I wish they weren't made. Thank you very much, Chair.
Commissioner Romano.
I won't echo what Commissioner Farrington says, but I take issue with the fact of that statement. I resent the fact that actually it was my integrity that was questioned, because they're saying that I was part of that commission that I wasn't in. I didn't end up at that meeting, but I did make a call to Mr. Sabatini prior to. We did have the, over the weekend, we were allowed to call in over the weekend if we had recommendations on any of these amendments, if we wanted to change them. Now, if Ms. Kleinfeld felt that she didn't want to do it, Kleinfeld and felt. That rhymes almost. If Ms. Kleinfeld felt she didn't want to bring that up over the weekend to our personnel, then that's her problem. But to insinuate that all of this is the Republicans and all of this is Democrats, a bunch of hooey. Everybody's been cut on this, and we don't gut anybody. There's been some decreases, but there's no gutting in here, and I think you should find a better word to use. I resent that, Ms. Kleinfeld, and I resent it completely. Thank you.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you. I came in early. I normally come in early. I heard some people talking. I thought it was in Don's office. I went past and saw them sitting there, and I said, "Oh, okay." So I walked in, and looking at this, you said the Republicans and Democrats, and I'm thinking, well, county-wides are all Republicans. Well, the county-wides are all Republicans. But I would never look at this and say, well, let's get the Republican and the Democrat. I wouldn't even think of that. Looking at this, I never thought of that when I got in late with that, whatever time they started, because I don't know. And looking at, you just know more about who's where, I guess. I never thought about that. Nothing was ever mentioned about that when I was there. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Perna.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to tag on what Commissioner Hall said, that the clarification in reference to the animal control, I support his request, but as you indicated, that once we find out what he really needs a year now or 6 months from now, that might change his request. So thank you for that clarification. Chief, you missed it. No.
I'm sure I did.
Okay, any other speakers on this item? Okay, please vote.
Will you clarify the vote? Chair Gibbs said the yes vote is to decrease.
Yes is to decrease this item by $84,200.
Motion passes 9-4. Commissioners Kleinfeld, Nard, Wallace, and Song voting no.
Okay, next item is increase in contract services for Board of Commissioners, budget page C17, in the amount of $52,600.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Support Van Sickle.
Okay, made by Brown, supported by Van Sickle. Chair, would you like to speak?
Yes, we're looking at additional software to aid the board and have a fund available for us to possibly purchase that software and possibly use it for other purposes that the board deems necessary. So we wanted to have that line item increase, so we've got the flexibility to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Perna.
Commissioner Brown, does that come with a maintenance agreement also on that? Is this a one-time appropriation? Is there a maintenance agreement tied to this upward?
There's been no discussion on that. It'll be all brought forward to the board, but just gives us flexibility looking forward to the next year. There's nothing in the hopper yet, but.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. Just to keep back to the previous item, I think that almost any one of these items, we could probably come back next year and request an amendment if that need was really there. And so although I understand there might be a need possibly to increase our own budget, if we don't have it appropriated yet, then I don't think we should increase our budget at the same time decreasing others. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Motion passes 11-2. Commissioners Kleinfeld and Song voting no.
Okay, next item is decrease contract services for the executive office, budget paid C-23, and the amount is $74,100.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Basically,
You just need the motion first, Commissioner.
I'd like to make the motion.
Made by Farrington, supported by Zinner. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Basically, the increase that was asked for in the proposed budget was $114,000. So with this amendment, to decrease the proposed amount by $74,100 in contract services, it still is a $40,000 increase from last year, which also happens to be the same level as the Board of Commissioners contract services. So that's the reasoning. Thank you.
Any questions on this amendment? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 10-3. Commissioners Haw, Kleinfeld, and Nard voting no.
Okay, next item is decrease supplies and services for F&O in the amount of $250,000. Need a motion?
Motion is by Zinner to decrease
Support.
supplies and services.
Do I have support? Seeing no support for this, that amendment fails. Next item is 5, decrease repairs and maintenance for F&O for $250,000. New motion.
Zinner makes the motion.
Do I have support?
I'll support.
Supported by Kraft. Commissioner, would you like to speak on that motion or open up for discussion?
Open it for discussion.
Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. As was stated earlier, Lynn doesn't come here and ask for anything that she feels is over budget or under needed. A $250,000 reduction when we're talking about a roof and other necessities, I think is critically important for the budget. So I'll be voting yes on this. No to decrease it.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to speak against this motion. I think it's important to maintain the county facilities at a high level that we would like them to be maintained at, because it is, in the long run, cheaper to maintain things than it is to fix them after they fall into ill repair. We've had good working relationship with the facilities department, and I believe they're doing a good job, and I'd like them to continue to do that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Commissioner Van Sickle, your vote didn't come through yet. Thank you. Motion fails 3-10. Commissioners Brown, Farrington, Haw, Kleinfeld, Nard, Romano, Van Sickle, Wallace, Song, and Zinner voting no.
Okay, next item is decrease in contract services for IT in the amount of $100,000. Have support?
Support.
Supported by Kraft. So this is a decrease of $100,000 in the IT's budget. Chair Brown?
How much money was left in the budget last year that they didn't spend on this line item?
For this item, Kyle, do you have that actual number? I have the number that was in the audit, which was in total $1.6 million. That was not spent in that budget.
And we're asking to cut 100,000?
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Motion passes 11-2. Commissioners Kleinfeld and Wallace voting no.
Okay, next item is decrease repairs and maintenance for IT in the amount of $400,000. Need a motion for this item? Commissioner Zinner, are you making that motion, or?
Yes, I will make this motion.
Okay, do I have
for
support?
decrease.
Okay, seeing no support. Item fails. Next item, decrease in personnel for MSU extension in the amount of $65,500.
Make that motion. Support.
Made by Kraft, supported by Romano. Commissioner Kraft, do you want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real briefly, in the past, I know I've been a sort of a proponent of defunding the MSU extension in its entirety. And I have seen the value in the program over the years, and I like where they're at right now. I just don't feel the added personnel is necessary at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Motion passes 7-6. Commissioners Brown, Haw, Kleinfeld, Nard, Wallace, and Song voting no.
Okay, next item is create/increase contract services for the prosecutor in the amount of $35,000.
Romano will make the motion.
Support Van Sickle.
Made by Romano, supported by Van Sickle.
If I may, Chair. I think we discussed this pretty much at length. I think Prosecutor Lucido came before us, mentioned the fact that he had a grant writer that could provide him with a whole lot of money through grants, and the number of $250,000 sticks in my mind. He had requested $33,500. We were a little generous with that figure. If he can get $250,000, he's worth $35,000, and that's why we approved the $35,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-2. Commissioners Kleinfeld and Wallace voting no.
Okay, next item is increased personnel line item. 1/3 of one investigator and 2 support staff for the prosecutor in the amount of $84,000.
Romano will make that motion.
Made by Romano, supported by Nard. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. we had discussed this. In fact, we had a great presentation before us about, unfortunately, there are a lot of not only males but females that won't pay their support payments. And the reason they can't collect on these support payments is they don't have the personnel to go out there and get them. And the only time they actually get warrants are served on them is when they probably get a traffic stop, and then they worry about it, and then they end up in jail. This will provide additional funding for the prosecutor to hire these people to get out there and start getting some of these deadbeats, both male and female, start paying up and pony up on some of these child support payments. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Just my no vote on these line items are really based solely on the amount of positions that we gave this particular office last year compared to the other offices in the county. I'm not questioning the need. Thank you.
Commissioner Haw?
Thank you, Chair. I fully support our prosecutor taking this initiative. I've spoke on this numerous occasions in this past year. This is one piece of a huge puzzle and process that needs to be looked at in its entirety, and I have committed to doing that in this next term. So, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Motion passes 11-2. Commissioners Kleinfeld and Wallace voting no.
Next item is decreased capital outlay expense in the amount of $123,000.
Support. So moved.
Made by Song. Do we have support? Support by Farrington. Commissioner, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a decrease of the capital outlay, $123,000. This is just a very small drop in the bucket. The transfer over to the capital outlay is actually $10.7 million. And as you all know, the ARPA funds that we receive from the federal government have been transferred over to the capital funds. So I think it's important for us to be able to reduce that amount that's being taken from the general fund so that we can support other more critical needs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-2. Commissioners Kleinfeld and Nard voting no.
Okay, next item is decrease in capital outlay expenditures, money dedicated for Martha T. Berry in the amount of $1 million. I believe this is to move funds.
I make the motion for that, please.
Made by Zinner, supported by Farrington. Commissioner Zinner, do you want to speak of this?
No, you can continue, please.
So, per what I'm seeing here, this looks like this was originally budgeted for the capital outlay expenditures, and this is a transfer to put this towards Martha T. Berry and in a restricted fund, I'm understanding here, based on what I'm seeing coming up in a couple other amendments. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Joe, could you say all that again? You were kind of
Yes, so this $1 million was in the capital outlay budget with a $800,000 match, Commissioner, which you pointed that out in committee because I missed that. So this $1 million would be moved to a restricted fund specifically for Martha T. Berry. Seeing no speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 12-1. Commissioner Nard voting no.
Okay, Okay, next item is an increase in local government revenue for at-large drain match in the amount of $500,000.
I move for this.
Okay, motion's made by Zinner. Support? Supported by Kraft. Commissioner, do you want to speak of this?
This would hopefully go toward the River and Lake Fund if the board would support it. I believe citizens want this supported. And hopefully there would be a match, expected to be a match, according to the Public Works Commissioner. And she will take it from there. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
So Commissioner, this is already in the budget in the amount of $100,000, which I believe that was a typo per Steve. It was supposed to be $200,000 in the budget. So you're looking to amend that specific number in the budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Chair Brown.
Yes, this money again would go to the Lake and River Fund that'd be administered by the Public Works Commissioner. There would be a match with the local communities, a 50-50 match that would be there to clean out the drains around the county. And those monies would be all the contracts for the work that would be done to be brought back to the board for approval by the Public Works Commissioner, assuming they're over $35,000. And so this money would go to increase that fund, that is existing fund now that's been in use for some years. It's been in use for some years. So I support this. This $500,000 would be matched presumably by the match from the local communities of 50%, which would be get you your $1 million fund that was alluded to earlier in the meeting. So this is what this is. This is the fund.
Commissioner Haw.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
This is not the issue earlier that we agreed to table to public service tomorrow, is it? Part of it?
I think this is part of the discussion in general, yes.
It is related to that subject because originally there was a $1 million request to create a fund to do various things. This combines the money from the Clinton River clean out that was the Public Works Commissioner requested and rolls it into one fund, the Lake and River Fund, that is already in existence that offers opportunities for local governments to match 50% what the county puts forward to clean out drains around the county, not Lake St. Clair, but drains around our county.
That was the clarification I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
So it goes into a river fund that's different, river and lake fund that's different from the river and lake fund.
I misspoke. That fund is called something different. The Public Works calls that fund something different. What do they call that?
It's currently called the County at Large Drains.
The County at Large Drain Fund. Here. Excuse me. Very important clarification.
So on page C64, I believe it is, they have the county at-large drain. It's an appropriations, one line item. It's currently $100,000.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is it will become 1.1 million.
No.
That's why I was up here before. I think I just need clarification from the board office what the intention is. I'm hearing it will become 1.1 million. The local match revenue will become 550,000. That's my interpretation of what's being considered right now.
No, Steve, to clarify, you currently have it 100 in the budget.
Correct.
The motion is to change that number to $500,000.
It's a different line item. It's a different line item than we're discussing tomorrow.
Yeah, there's some other ones here.
Correct.
In addition to that, but basically it's a 50-50 match. But
correct.
What you currently have in the budget is $100,000, which I believe at committee you said that was supposed to be $200,000.
Yes, it should be 200.
Should be 200,000. So the motion is to change that from 200,000 to 500,000.
No, I think,
Steve, this is separate from the $1 million.
yeah, I guess I'm totally confused. I'm sorry.
I think is there not a revenue attachment to this, Steve?
What's so hard? We're going to add.
That's billed separately for the match? This is the revenue?
This is the $500,000 revenue for the $1 million.
Correct.
So this, I'm sorry, this is the revenue piece. This is the revenue
Okay,
adjustment. So
I'm
this is the
thinking of
50
it in total. So 13 and 19 go together hand in hand.
Correct.
Right, so you
That's
want to.
correct.
So
the
you want
net-
to increase the revenue by 100,000, by 500,000, or to 500,000?
To 500.
To 500,000.
Okay, because when I look at this list, these are additions or deletions, not adjustments to a number.
This is an adjustment to a number.
Okay, that's totally different than where okay. So the same thing on the, on line 19, on the expense side. You're
Correct.
going to adjust it to $1 million, not by $1 million.
Correct.
Good. All right.
To get us to that number.
Okay, thank you.
Too many accountants in the room.
I don't understand how they relate to each other now. I thought it was two different line items. I absolutely am lost.
Okay,
I'm
who has
sorry.
the floor? Commissioner Hall,
I was the one that had the floor.
you had the floor. Okay, Commissioner. So basically, in the budget, if you look at the county at-large drains, this was discussed last year because I actually made this motion last year to double that budget. It's a 50-50 match, and we're looking to increase it even more based on the presentations that the Public Works Commissioner made to the board in regards to all drains throughout the county that need to be serviced.
I'm sorry. I thought it was a completely separate thing from the $1 million. How does it relate? Because you said they were related. The 13 and 19 were related. That's what.
Related in the means of they would be under the discretion of the Public Works Commissioner. That's what I was referring to.
But they're two totally different line items that really aren't related to each other.
Yeah, I think the initial creation of an actual lake and river fund for $1 million is what was forwarded to this board from the other board. And that's why it was put on the agenda that way. But I think in regards to all the amendments that are happening here today, I'll say it's a collective discussion, but I think Commissioner Zinner wants to talk about it even more tomorrow at that meeting. But I think the intent here is to get more funds to the Public Works Commissioner to do more cleaning of the drains and other items, as you can see here, because we have a Clinton River Cleanup Fund, another adjustment here to the drain fund that we just talked about with Steve. So I think the intent here is to get it to a certain number based on the numbers that are on the page in front of me, if that makes sense. I'll let you deliberate there. I'll bring you back, Commissioner. Commissioner Zinner?
Thank you, Chair. According to the area where it says drain match, part of the rivers and literally to the lake, there's a drain that has this sediment in it that has changed that drain where it used to have water coming out. Fishermen called me to see it. I brought it up a long time ago. They can't catch their regular fish. They get the bad fish that come in because it's literally a quicksand, like the muckweed that I've talked about before. It's quicksand filling the end of that drain for maybe 100 feet or more. So some fish have now made it through to the side of it. If people go into that, you hear them yelling because they think with the water, a little bit of water on top, it looks like it's 2 inches deep. But if they get inside there, as soon as somebody hears somebody yelling, they know they're gone down and it's up to their neck. So that is the situation in a drain that could be cleaned out, and that literally goes right into the lake. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. I share Mr. Schmiegel's confusion to, so far, all of the numbers we voted on have been adjustments. I think we should, if it's 200,000 to 500,000, then I think we should list 300,000 as the adjustment so that we stay consistent. Thank you.
Because this is a 50-50 match, we have to do it in this manner. It's not, basically, we have revenue and we have expense in this specific item. So in order for finance to calculate it correctly, it has to be done in this manner.
I totally don't understand that, sorry.
Steve,
And
does
aren't
Steve
we
leave? He's still
budgeting-
here.
Aren't we budgeting the monies we put in? I don't care if somebody's matching it later.
We only go up to, we would only be going up to $500,000. So this is how finance has it set up in the budget. If we want to create, because it's in the appropriations, I don't think we can create a revenue line item. You net it in one line item, correct,
No,
Steve?
we don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay, where is the other side of the
It's in
transaction?
charges for services or interdepartmental. So I agree with Commissioner Van Sickle. We just adjust the revenue up by X amount and we adjust the expense up by the same, similar amount, double that, really. I think I know where the board is headed. It's just a matter of semantics and how we get there.
Okay, so where is the so we can adjust the amendment so that basically the net is still $500,000 per what Steve just said.
Exactly. I'll work with Kyle and get it
So
straightened out.
where is you said it's in the intergovernmental?
Is it C62 or C63? 64 is the expense side.
Right, where's the revenue side?
C62.
Okay, so C62.
And I can't remember if it's in intergovernmental or charges for services. It's on C62 in one of those two line items.
Okay, so Commissioner Zinner, would you like, could you amend your motion to hold on here. So Steve, is this 500,000 correct for this line item? And then we need to put the difference on the, because there's another amendment coming up here to increase.
Right, I think
And
what...
is the increase should be on C62? Is that correct?
Correct. I think what you're aiming at is to increase the revenue by 450,000 and increase the expense by 900,000. That'll get the total expense to $1 million and the total revenue to 500.
Correct. Okay, so there's an amendment coming up that was that's actually wrong. It needs to be under non-departmental C62, correct? For the $1 million?
C64. The $1 million, so if you look on C64, 1, 2, 3, third line down is the county at-large drain. What I hear the board saying is that their intent is that number should be $1 million.
Correct. Okay, I see it. We have them backwards.
And then on C62, the intergovernmental is going to go up by 450, or the charges for services will go up by 450, whatever.
So this is actually backwards between this item and item 19. They're actually backwards. Well, this one's correct,
Yeah.
but I'm sorry, 19 is the wrong amount. Correct? Because that one would need to increase as well.
Yeah, the other one of them is. So I think what you're aiming at is on line 13, that number should be negative 450.
Because we already have the 50,000 there.
Correct. And on line 19, that should be 900,000 because we have 100,000 built in already.
Okay. Commissioner Zinner, do you see that? Does that make sense? It's just how they account for the revenue and the expense. Make sense? Okay. So
we're increasing by 400, no, we're negative.
you're increasing it by $450,000.
I'm going to amend my motion to increase by $450,000.
Okay. And
I
who
will
supported
continue
that?
to support that based on Steve's intent, because that was my intent as well,
Okay.
supporting that motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Okay, I finally got what you're doing because we've never actually amended incoming outside revenue because we don't control incoming outside revenue. So I've never seen it before, so I wouldn't
We
have-
did this last year, Commissioner, and it was tricky then, and now we just have more numbers
So,
moving around here.
Here's the catch on this one. We would first approve the expenditures because if the expenditure doesn't get approved, then the outside revenue doesn't exist. And the expenditure is being put on tomorrow's agenda, correct? No,
That's
it's not a separate item, is it?
This is specific to this line item on the budget. The creation of a lake and river fund for $1 million is not on the budget. And this is specifically for the county at-large drains, specific to that line
so
item.
the $1 million that's on 19 is separate from the $1 million that was on the agenda item, which I didn't know that. I thought
Correct.
they were the same $1
Correct.
million.
Correct. Sorry for the confusion, but that is correct.
Okay. So we're talking about increasing almost 2 million, what we're giving from the general fund to drains, correct?
This one right here would be getting that number to $500,000, bumping it up to $500,000 for that line item.
I thought we were bumping the revenues up, the match.
That's coming up in another amendment here. That would be in 19, because they have to be acted separately because they're separate.
No, the one we're voting on right now is the revenue, increased local government revenue.
I'm sorry,
We're voting
yes,
on the
I'm sorry,
revenue
I'm sorry,
right
yes.
now.
Correct.
So the revenue is 500,000. They don't do a 100% match, correct? They do a 50% match? So if we're increasing that to 500,000, we're not bringing up the number 19 to 500,000. We're bringing it up to $1 million. So they are two separate $1 million that you're talking about. We are not bringing up the, huh?
Point of clarification, if I
Yeah.
can. My understanding is if this goes up to 500, 19 would have to go to 750. Correct, Steve? Steve?
He said 950.
If the revenue on line 13 goes to $500,000, the expense on line 19 needs to be $1 million.
Correct.
So back to Commissioner Kleinfeld's point earlier, if you vote on line 13 and you increase the revenue by $500,000, and you don't subsequently approve line 19, you've not accomplished anything because you've put revenue into the budget that'll never be realized.
Correct.
And what's in line 19 right now?
That's the 100,000.
100. So we're adding 900,000 in expenditures.
And 450,000 on the revenue side, because there's 50,000 of revenue already built into the budget that's before you.
So the 1 million doesn't include the 500,000 above, or it does include it?
How do I respond?
Okay,
So
I got it.
Yeah, the
Never
million
mind.
is on the expense.
Never mind, I
Yeah.
got it. But, okay. I got it, thank you.
You got it?
Charges for services.
All right, so the revenue, back to my earlier point, the revenue match is in the charges for services line item, so that $4.8 million would have to go up by 450,000.
Into that item. Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Let me see if I understand it. if we approve 13 and 19, it means we're going to approve expenditures of $1 million, of which other governmental agencies will give us back half of that, and we'll actually spend half of it out of the general fund.
That's correct.
Should we change the amendment to vote on 19 and 13 at the same time? Since they are so related, just a thought. Thank you, Chair.
We have one more speaker, and then we can make that decision. Commissioner Farrington?
Thank you. I was basically going to say the same thing, as if you vote yes on 13, vote yes on 19, vote no on 13, vote no on 19. Either way you want to do it, or combine them.
Are you, Commissioner, are you comfortable with that? Or? Okay, Commissioner Kraft, you have a question?
I was just going to say, as the supporter of the original motion a half hour ago, I would be all for tie-barring those two together in one vote. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so Commissioner Zinner, would you like to amend your amendment here to both increase the local government revenue at large drain match and increase the county at large drain fund so that we get to what you're trying to accomplish?
Yes. I will amend that.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kraft supports that still, so I think we figured it out. And I see no other speakers. Please vote.
Motion passes 10-3. Commissioners Kleinfeld, Wallace, and Song voting no.
Okay. Steve, we got it figured out, right? You good?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I understand what you're doing.
Okay.
Clarify.
Next item, this is a decrease in advertising for more than a job in the amount of $100,000.
Make the motion. Support.
Made by Kraft, supported by Romano. Commissioner, do you want to speak in regards to this?
Just real briefly, during our presentations, we had a lot of county departments come up, and it sounds like many of them do their own advertising within their own budgets, and I just don't feel that $100,000 is necessary for a countywide program when we have other online programs where folks can find jobs and jobs can be advertised for free. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Chair Brown, your vote didn't come through for me. Thank you. Motion passes 10-3. Commissioners Brown, Kleinfeld, and Song voting no.
Okay, next item is decreased professional development initiative in the amount of $100,000.
Chair, I'll make that motion.
Made by Song, supported by Kraft. Commissioner?
And I'd like to defer to Commissioner Kraft.
Well done. Well played. So this has been something that has come up over the years in my wheelhouse a little bit, and the number just continues to increase. And I think this is a way to continue the program that we're doing, but I just didn't feel the increase in cost was entirely necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, seeing no speakers on this item, please vote.
Motion passes 10-3. Commissioners Brown, Haw, and Kleinfeld voting no.
Next item is increased funding for advancing Macomb in the amount of $100,000.
I'll make that motion.
Have support. Made by Van Sickle, supported by Nard. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. Advancing Macomb, located in Mount Clemens, we would use this money to write a contract with them for two purposes. One would be for advancing the small business initiative to bring small businesses and other industries to Macomb County. The other portion of that would be for them to mentor and to help nonprofits in the county. Nonprofits in the county do a lot of good work to support our citizens who are, to hopefully have them not fall through the cracks and to give them a safety net. So the other point of this is that if we do this contract with them, they can also get matching grants from outside of Macomb County to bring in another $100,000 into this to support this program. So all in all, I think it would be a win-win for the county. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you'd allow me a little leeway for this item and the next item, because the question is pertaining to both, and I don't know who to ask this to. We've had conversations about appropriations in the past on giving them to certain organizations and things like that, and how government dollars get transferred to those organizations, Turning Point specifically, because they are in our appropriations section, and that's through a contract. And I'm just wondering what comes first, the line item budget dollars for those organizations or the contract? Because as far as I know, we don't have a contract with Advancing Macomb. I know we have one with Turning Point. So how would that process go? Are we is it chicken and egg sort of thing? Or like I said, I guess I don't know who
We
to
have
ask
legal,
it.
our corporate counsel here. You could probably address that if you'd like.
Thanks, John.
All John wanted to be was a spectator.
Well, I wish I would have worn a tie. You can appropriate, it just can't be spent absent a contract.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. In line with that questioning by Commissioner Kraft, when it said we would write a contract, who is we? Especially to a 501c3.
Advancing Macomb would actually write the contract and bring it to us. We would go out and request.
Us?
We would request a quote from them, and they would prepare that and bring it to us.
Bring it to the board?
Yes.
For approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, they'd work with our legal and the executive.
I know this may be a unique situation. Under our purchasing policy, anything over $35,000 has to come to the board and be approved and have competitive bids. How are you going to get a competitive bid?
If there's only one bidder, there's only one bidder.
I wouldn't.
You put it out for bid, and if...
I wouldn't count on that, Don.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. I'm just pointing it out because it was said earlier, we chastise the administration when they don't follow the process and procedures. We don't want to start doing it ourselves. Just saying. Thank you.
Just clarification, Commissioner Van Sickle. So this contract would be brought to the executive office, and that would be brought to this board, or you're saying that contract would be brought to this board?
I have to admit, this is the first time I'm going through this, so we're sort of working a little bit through it. It's my understanding that Advancing Macomb would work with the executive office and possibly our legal to structure the contract so it was agreeable and legal with all the aspects of it, and then to actually spend the money, it would be brought to the board for approval.
Okay. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall touched on exactly what I was thinking was we don't contract with entities unless it's specifically for services for our department. We don't contract with entities with regard to any other aspect of the rest of the county. That falls under the county exec's office. These are increases, so we have contracts with both these entities, this one and the next one, correct?
This one, we do not. Turning Point, we do.
Well, it says, oh, we do not have a contract with them.
That's what Commissioner Van Sickle is proposing. Allocating funds for them, but still would need to go through the process. If that's correct, Commissioner.
It clearly has to go through the executive office.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have information. We don't have a contract. We have your discussion with them about what you would like them to do.
Correct, but we're not spending the money at this point. We're just allocating it in the budget. If when the contract's written, it isn't to our liking, then we don't approve it.
And also with respect to the next one, we do contract with them. This is an increase in that. And again, we don't have a contract for that. We have a contract for the existing dollar amount. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Song?
Thank you, Chair. I don't remember last year being this contentious. So my understanding is, under appropriations, we appropriate money to outside organizations, nonprofits, chambers of commerce, et cetera. But I would really, and I think it's really important to invest in our nonprofits in Macomb County because there is not a lot of a support or a support system to help. So I see where you're going with that, Commissioner Van Sickle. I commend you for bringing this forward. I think the best way to go about this would be to invite Advance Macomb to come and do a presentation similar to what Turning Point did last week, because I thought that was really informative and very compelling, because then we could really see, the work that they are doing to make a difference in our county. And so I don't, I think we could continue this conversation. It is a hard sell. Right now, when you see the 100,000 and then you see the 10,000 for Turning Point, you could argue that both, nonprofits do a phenomenal job to support, our residents in Macomb County. I'd really like for them, not just them, but even the chambers, all of these organizations that we appropriate to. I would say about 90% of them didn't come before us. We're relying on the recommendation of the executive to bring these forward, but I'd really like for them to come before us, like Turning Point did, because that was really helpful for me to see the important work that they're doing and why we would want to appropriate that, those dollar amounts to them. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Commissioner Song said. I guess I'd like to know if we're going to allocate a $100,000 bucket, what's it going to? Before I really want to vote in the positive for this. So I'm not against the concept, but just like many other things we've discussed at this board, I'd like to see something concrete before I say it's worth $100,000 that we're going to allocate. So thank you.
Commissioner Kraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to some of my previous comments. So we need a contract, but there isn't a contract that exists at all. Advancing Macomb has not come forward to the executive's office. They're shaking their heads no. Okay. So this doesn't exist. This is all from scratch, out of nowhere. Pick organization X. Here's an appropriation for $100,000. I've met with this group. I know what they do. I appreciate their good work. I just think we're doing this the wrong way, and that's why I'll be voting no until a contract comes before us for me to see. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Seeing Chair Brown?
I'm sorry, my screen didn't pop up. This is an appropriate time to allocate money, though we haven't decided exactly what we're going to do. This is the budget season. By putting money in a line item for advancing Macomb, I think it's worthwhile. I think they do many good things, and I think we could see we can do to work out a contract with them and cooperate with the executive's office to go forward. But putting money in the budget to hold it there, we'll bring them in. It'd be a good idea to have them come in like they did with Turning Point, do a presentation so people can understand. And but I support Commissioner Van Sickle's amendment to put some money in a line item to hold it and maybe things can't come off as envisioned, the money will still be in the budget, and we won't have spent anything, but at least we'll have the money there to do something should we wish. So I recommend we support this amendment. Thank you.
Commissioner Romano.
Short and sweet. The money's going to come in. We don't like what they present. We say no. Money goes back in the general fund. Can't be any more simpler than that, guys. Thank you.
That is correct. Okay, seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Motion passes 8-5. Commissioners Kleinfeld, Kraft, Sabatini, Song, and Zinner voting no.
Okay, next item is increase in appropriations for Turning Point in the amount of $10,000. I'll make that amendment. I'll support it. Supported by Haw. Basically, right now, we do have an agreement with Turning Point in the amount of $30,000. They were just here the other day. I was very compelled as to what they do for our county and feel that we should be giving them some more funds. This is obviously a start, but I did look at their previous year's budgets, and their $30,000 budget has not changed in a number of years. So I think it's warranted, and I think we should appropriate more funds to Turning Point. However, as we've already discussed in the previous item, we would have to get an updated agreement with Turning Point in order to suffice the increase in the appropriation. Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if the original motion maker could amend it to be instead of 10,000, 30,000. I had initially put in that request, and I know there were a number that came in, and so Kyle wasn't able to add it to here. I know you mentioned about, putting it at the end, but now that we're talking about it, I think it would just simplify things a lot more if we could increase that amount to 30,000, because I believe that, the work that they are doing is so important, and they came before us and made their case, and a number of them, work after hours. They volunteer their time. This is a problem that's not going to go away, and I think it's really important for us to be advocates for the victims in our county. So I would propose that. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner, I'll amend it to 20,000. I think we need to have that discussion with Turning Point just to verify that they have.
I would accept that.
Okay. So I'll amend that motion to $20,000. Commissioner Hall, you support that? Commissioner Kleinfeld.
So I would like to have supported 10,000 because that's a 33% increase, whereas the 130,000 would be a 100% increase. I have a question. I know they work with the prosecutor's office because that's who came up and talked to us. So does the contract, is it created out of the county exec's office with them, or because it was prosecutors that came up and talked to us with them? Who creates the contract?
Vicki?
It's the health department.
The health department?
Correct.
Okay. And we don't know the health department's position on it?
Andrew's here, he can probably speak to it. I don't know that we're opposed to it. I mean, obviously, it is a really good program, but I know the prosecutor's office works with them. I know
I know he's not going to be against increasing anything, right?
The sheriff's office has a piece with them. I know there was talk about funding for a sheriff's deputy, and that to assign with Turning Point and a grant that they're getting. And obviously, Andrew can speak to the contract that I believe we just signed within the past month for them. So I don't think we're opposed to it, but we didn't know it was on here, so until today.
Thanks, Commissioners. Yeah, I did not know they were meeting with you all. It's a great organization. They do great work, for sure. So we definitely support increasing the funds. I know the funds that we provide to them are flexible which is really useful to the organization because a lot of their grant funding dollars are very specific on what they can use those funds for. So
Okay.
allowing us to fund them in the past at the $30,000 was appreciated, but this will be very appreciated going above and beyond that. But we typically meet with them once a year.
Okay, thank you. And it's 20, correct? Thank you.
Correct, 20. Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, don't sit down. How does the health department pass the money out to Turning Point? Do they come with project by project and you give them what each project is, or do you just hand them the 30,000 at the beginning of the year, or what goes on?
Yeah, typically when they meet with us, they don't exactly provide a budget, but they do do a annual report of all the services and the numbers that they do provide. So they do a presentation to us when they meet, and they talk about numbers and how those numbers have increased. They also talk about the different needs and the services that they do provide. So that is typically how our meeting goes, and how the need is justified.
So again, do you give them 30,000 at the beginning of the year? Do you give them project by project? I didn't hear an answer in there.
Correct. It's basically calendar year funds that are given to them at the beginning of the year.
And is there any audit done?
Not that I'm aware of, Commissioner.
Would you consider an audit?
What type of audit are you referring to?
Financial audit?
I would have to work with Steve in finance on that one.
Because typically when we give people, unless it's a contract, like you have a contract that says they'll do this for X, we usually audit books of.
There is a contract of what the services they'll provide.
Okay, so there is a contract.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve.
If I may, Chair, being a 501c3, they have to meet federal guidelines, and those guidelines are audited in addition to the distribution of funds, correct?
Correct, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
We just have never done the audit.
I just wanted to help my fellow
Commissioner Song?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Kleinfeld, I know you're leaving, but we're still going to have to see each other. This is a 100% increase, but it's still well under the 100,000 we just passed for the previous item. And they came before us and they made their case, and I thought it was really compelling. And I know it's 100%, increase with the $30,000, but it's still well under the 100.
We're doing 20, right?
I'm just messing with you. Yes, it's 20. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
We're voting to increase, is that correct?
Increasing, the budget from 30 to 50,000.
Motion passes 13-0.
That was unanimous? Okay, next item. This is a decrease in the Clinton River Cleanup Fund in the amount of $100,000. Moved by Commissioner Brown, supported by Commissioner Zinner. Commissioners, this, just for clarity, is this to move this to the?
Yes. Roll it into the other fund, the training.
Commissioner, your mic is off. Just clarify what that is.
Yeah, we're moving that money into the fund we had that lengthy discussion on regarding the drain fund. It is the
County at Large
County
Drains?
at Large Drain Fund.
Okay, so removing it from the Clinton River cleanup line item and moving it to the County at Large Drains line item, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
So I thought the reason you guys were doing this is because you're doing the million for the river lake cleanup, which I thought that's different than the county drains. Right?
Yeah, this is to amend the budget from that line item to incorporate it into the other budget line
Into
item.
the county drains? So we're getting rid of the money to clean up the Clinton River.
I don't think we're getting rid of it. I think we're putting it in there so that the Public Works Commissioner can use it for that purpose as well.
Well, no, she can't use it for Clinton River cleanup if it's in the county drains, county at large drains. She doesn't oversee, it would, that's for drains, correct? She can't use it on the Clinton River if we move it into the drains, correct?
It's a big drain.
I'm just repeating what the amendment was made, Commissioner. I mean, Chair Brown, you want to speak more of it?
That gives, that money going into that fund will give the Public Works Commissioner the ability to use that money to partner with local entities to clean out the Clinton River or drains. So that's how I envision that to operate.
Okay, so with respect to the drains, you guys just increased the match to 500,000 and you're getting ready to put $1 million in that budget. And on top of that, you want to take this 100,000 and put it in there and remove it from the Clinton River cleanup
No,
drain?
100,000 is going to be part of the $500,000 that we're going to create in the drain fund.
Those are two different, those are, Steve?
Here he comes.
They're two different things, right?
What I hear being said is you're going to eliminate the Clinton River cleanup line item. You're going to put $1 million in for drain cleanup. And what I'm also hearing is that the board's intention that a portion of that $1 million could be used toward the Clinton River cleanup. The county at-large drain program has typically been used for the cleanup of drains under the control of the Public Works Office.
Yeah, typically.
I think the Clinton River is a little bit different from what I understand. I think Commissioner Miller might be able to answer that more authoritatively than I.
So in my opinion, there's a reason why these are already two different line items. Because they're two different things. There's the county drain system, and there's the river, and there's the lake, which are different things than the county drain system.
I would agree with you.
I believe in talking informally with the Public Works Commissioner's office, those two things can be accomplished using the same fund. But we'll.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. And I know, like, you guys are ready to stop talking about the drains and the rivers and all that, but it doesn't make sense. I don't know what else to say. It doesn't make sense. We already spent like a half hour on the local drain, and then 13 and 19. And we finally figured out they go together. Vote yes, no, both ways. If the Clinton River cleanup funds are with the drain funds, and all the power is with Commissioner Miller, and she decides just drains this time and no cleanup of the Clinton River, then you're going to have a whole nother mess. They need to stay separated. This is my opinion, which I have a right to address. They need to stay separate. There needs to be a line item for the cleanup of the Clinton River and then for the drains. They're separate. It's great that you think that we can combine them and then Commissioner Miller can, keep them divided. However, if there's an issue with the drains and she decides all the funds go towards the drains, then that's it. It has to stay separate. That's my opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is, as Commissioner Wallace said, this is just confusing. I'm not saying I'm against it conceptually, but we got a lot of questions outlined here is, can we take money from the one to the other? And no, I'm not just going to take a commissioner's word on that. Commissioner Miller, I would, but not one of the Board of Commissioners on that. That's a question. How they're going to allocate $1 million is a question. Is there a match on this? Because now it's out of the other fund is a question. If we want to do something like this, and I'm gone in a month, but my recommendation in the future is to have a presentation prior to a budget meeting to come up conceptually open and transparent in front of everyone to figure out if this is something we want to do. So, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, so, yep.
I understand where Commissioner Wallace is coming from, and I agree with her. I can understand that. If we want to leave this in a standalone fund, we've created the one fund that has $500,000 in it to be a match in the county drains for specific county drains. We can leave the $100,000 there. I have no issue with that. I was trying to find money to try to combine them, but that's certainly to help lower the total cost. So I have no problem if we want to leave it there, and I'll withdraw my motion to remove it. We'll leave it there. If the board wants to do it, I support that. Thank you, Commissioner Wallace.
Commissioner Kraft, did you still want to speak?
I've been debating, but sure. Because, man, my brain is scrambled over all this. So I came into this today thinking there's a fund for drains and a fund for lakes and rivers and everything else, and they were two totally separate. And here's dollar amount X for drains, and here's dollar amount X, not specific to the Clinton River, but for every other river and for Lake St. Clair. Now it's almost seemed like a jumbled combination of the both, and money's going this way and that way. And I think I know where it went, but the way we keep going in circles, I guess I'm not 100% sure. So the Clinton River Cleanup Fund is new for 2023 recommended. That didn't exist before, at least in recent years, and it's not on our budget book to exist in incoming years. So my thought was that you take funding from the Clinton River Cleanup and you add it to the Lakes and Rivers Fund, whatever, and that's the funding you use to clean up all the lakes and rivers and things like that. And again, the drains are over here separate, so Commissioner Wallace and I are excited because the water by us is getting cleaned up, but so is my drain down the street. So I guess a little bit of clarification would be incredibly helpful before Wednesday, if possible, when the final decisions are made. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so the motion maker's already rescinded the motion, so we're going to leave it as is in the budget. Okay. Commissioner Hall, did you still want to speak to that?
Well, Commissioner Kraft covered most of what I was going to say. But two things. When you confuse it with the drain board, with drains, you have a drain board involved, as well as Commissioner Miller, and many of us sit on that drain board. So that's critically important too. I wanted to point out the one drain that she did come here and talk to about repairing in Roseville was $397,000. One drain that wasn't even totally destroyed. So when we're talking drains and Clinton River cleanup, they're two separate pots to me, and I think that's what Commissioner Kraft just said. So I'm afraid to agree with him because he may change. So that's all I have.
Okay, so this has been removed, so we will not be voting on that item. So we now are going to, we've already voted on 19 in combination with 13. Correct, those were combined. So now we are to 20, which is increased personnel for 2 part-time office assistants for the CPL fund in the amount of $39,910.
I'll make the motion.
Made by Kraft, supported by Haw. Commissioner Kraft, you want to speak on that?
Real quick, I've spoken way too much today. The clerk came before us and asked for 2 part-time positions for the CPL department. It's my understanding that the funding is through the CPL fund, which is a special fund, and I am supportive of that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So this is just an adjustment, Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if the fees for the CPL license could be increased to cover the increased personnel?
I don't know.
Anyone want to answer that?
Is the clerk here?
I think they have enough money, and that fund really wouldn't need to. I think their revenue is more than enough.
Okay.
Here he comes. Thank you, Steve.
Per Crystal.
I don't believe so, but I think the clerk's office would be who you need to touch base with. But if you look at the budget, there's a fund balance that's in that fund. The idea was for the fund balance to pay for these positions.
So there's adequate revenues.
Correct.
In the fund.
Okay, so this is not revenue from the general fund. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers in this item, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Okay, next item is increase food program expenditures in the amount of $300,000.
I'll make that motion.
Is there support? Support. Supported by Haw. Commissioner Song?
Thank you, Chair. So you guys can talk about drains and trains and cleanup, but I'm going to talk about food. And I know it's almost dinner time, so we're all hungry. We've got a long week ahead of us. At the end of the week is going to be Thanksgiving. So happy early Thanksgiving to all of you. I've talked about this before. I'm going to say it again. The Macomb Food Program has run out of money, and I'm going to, Commissioners, direct you to this handout that is on your desk. And if you look at the graph from 2020 until this year of 2022, the number of individuals that are served throughout the food bank and local pantries has increased, as well as the number of families from 22,000 to 255,000 individuals, from 87,000 families to 90,000 families, and the TFAP dollars, which is the federal grant money, which is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, has gone down significantly from 950,000, almost a million, to 581,000 projected. So as the number of people that we continue to serve has gone up, the number of dollars coming into our county has decreased. And the number of people going to our food pantries has continued to increase. So Commissioner Nard, the Van Dyke Public Schools, which is in our district, there are students that go home hungry on the weekends. They rely on the food in schools. And so these pantries are critical to filling that gap. The Macomb Food Program, which is the nonprofit 501c3, has done an incredible job of supplementing and raising money to donate back into our food pantry. So unlike the appropriations that we've been arguing about, we do not give money to the Macomb Food Program, 501c3. They give money to us. But we have to continue to help our residents, and so I'm imploring you to please support this amendment. $300,000 to D3, not D32, would go to supplies and services specifically for the purchase of food. Not personnel, but to purchase food. And if you guys know, peanut butter is not 99 cents anymore, it's $2. Milk is not 99 cents anymore, it's $3.25. Everything has gone up. It's going to continue to go up. And we need to fund this. If you have not been at the warehouse, I was there 2 years ago. It was completely full. If you go there now, there are a lot of empty shelves. And this morning, I personally went and bought 45 turkeys and donated them to the food pantry. But that was not enough because last year the county had $30,000. They bought 1,500 turkeys for Thanksgiving, and they were not able to do that this year because they ran out of money. And the year's not even over yet. So we've made a lot of decreases the past 2 hours. I've added it up. This is going to, even this $300,000, we're still going to have a balanced budget. The number of items that we've just decreased is going to be enough for us to fund the food program. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Even though Commissioner Song and I always agree on everything, I will be voting yes for this. With the economy the way it is, it isn't going to get any better. It's going to get a lot worse. And I think this is a program that's well worth the money invested into it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Just for clarification, you said this is D3, not D32?
Yeah, so if you look at D32, there is a line item there, and maybe Steve, and if Ernest is here, can talk about the $3 million. A lot of that actually goes towards personnel and the actual maintenance of the warehouse. So I don't believe that amount is, or was it $3 million, Kyle? 3 million? I was off by a lot. That doesn't go towards the purchase of food, and so this amendment would be to recommend that this dollar
I
amount
actually
go
think
towards.
the adjustment belongs on D32. That's Community Actions fund that has a September 30 year end. I think that's where the adjustment belongs.
Right, because if you put it in D3, you're not assuring it goes directly to food because there's personnel, supplies, and services.
So I think it belongs on D32, which flows up further onto to D29, I think, but because that D32 is just breaking out the expenses by program.
All right, and then that line item was $4,046,000 last year. So her 300,000 would bring it back up to what it was, like exactly. Was there there was like almost exactly.
So I believe that might have been because of the TFAP funding. It has gone down. So that's why you're seeing the decrease. Yes.
Yeah, if the commissioners want to make the stipulation that the 300,000 is directly dedicated to supplies and services, it will be used for the purchases of food. But I really appreciate your impassioned plea. I can tell you, it means a lot that you went out and bought those turkeys. It was a hard decision not to buy the 1,500 turkeys we bought every year. And part of that was simply due to the scarcity of food in our food pantries. The increased number almost doubled coming to most of our food pantries. And so when it came time to buy those 1,500 turkeys, first of all, we had to do it months ago through our supply chain ordering. But we also knew that we could put food on a lot more tables if we did not purchase a turkey. So it was all about responding to the dramatic need in food across our county. And we can certainly stipulate that that 300,000 goes directly to buy more food. Thank you.
So the $3,746,000 that was $4,046,000, did that drop because of a drop in federal revenues?
Yes, the federal revenue for the TFAP did drop.
So that's the reason for the drop in the expenditures in that line item?
Yes, I would guess so. There are a couple different pages where this comes from the USDA, but the TFAP dropped, and that is where we have to use our supply chain purchases from the USDA.
Okay, so that didn't drop because you don't have the need anymore.
No.
It dropped because the money wasn't coming in from the federal
Yes, that's
government.
right.
That's my question.
That's right.
Okay, and it's almost exactly 300,000. I think I'm off by,
It's $85 off.
Yeah.
yeah, like a yeah,
Right,
okay,
well,
all right.
And that's understating it too, because with the food prices going up, even if our money stayed the same, it'd feel like less this year.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Ernest. Turn. I just have a quick question. I do think that we need to allocate money toward this because, like you said, the price of food is going up. It's crazy. You mentioned schools, and just wondering, like, does a school have to be labeled like a certain title for kids? And maybe you don't know. I don't know. For kids to get food, like in Mount Clemens, on Fridays the kids get food sent home.
Yes. Yes. So even the free and reduced lunch, that program is still going on, but only in certain designated zones. So like Warren Consolidated Schools is considered, low income, and so the students in that community get free lunches, but not every school district does.
And so
Ernest's voice changed.
Yeah, drastically. It was crazy. So Are there, and I know the funding, we lost the funding for one specific area, but have you noticed or know of any other funding that we can go after for this specific reason?
You know, the school distribution itself is a district issue around the school districts. If you're talking about just for food in general, we were applying for the Reach and Resiliency Grant. If you remember, we did receive that one. And we continue to look and apply for funding as it's available. Although, you know, creating new pantries is always hard. And as we mentioned last time, it requires a volunteer effort.
Right.
And so we do stay on the lookout, although part of the funding requests for other positions around grant seeking are much needed because, you know, our food program manager is looking for grants in between their other duties of their job.
Right, right. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'm full support of this item. Do want to note, though, that as of right now, we're a little less than 200 of available funds as far as the changes were concerned. So if you're going to vote for this, I would recommend you also vote for the next item regarding the $77,000. Thank you.
I know I have one more speaker, Commissioner Kleinfeld, but before we get to you in second round here, you know, when I looked at this initially, this budget, we transfer in $5.3 million of general fund dollars into it, and we have allocated, over $3.7 million towards the Macomb food program. It's unfortunate that the amount did go down by this, but I think, you know, this is the tough part of what we do because we have to figure out where the needs and where the wants are, and I think this is a definite need. I'm just going to ask Commissioner Song if she can make it $300,085 so it matches what we did last year in that budget.
I'd support that.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you. Just a real quick clarification. The schools that are titled that way, it's free lunches school district wide, but every school in every district in the United States, if a child is family is of a certain income, that free and reduced lunch form is done in every school district in the United States. I just wanted to clarify that situation. But and the other thing is, we're not talking about this food going to the schools, right? Okay.
A point of clarification, Chair. So this would be to purchase food for the food pantry, which would then get distributed to the local pantries across our county. And it does, in essence, supplement the food for the kids who go home hungry. The food pantries supplement that food.
I just got confused because there was a whole discussion about school districts, and I didn't know how that. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Zinner?
Ernest, I know you have all this money that comes into your department. I know it's all sent to particular areas. I imagine. I mean, I'm sure because I see it. So there's no way you can budget anything, take any money from any of those areas for your food, apparently.
No, that is correct.
Right. So well, this is for next year, so that takes care of that. I just wanted to verify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for increasing the food program expenditures specific to the Macomb food program in the amount of $300,085. Please vote.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, next item is a decrease in personnel in Macomb Community Action in the amount of $77,000. I'll make this motion.
I'll support it.
So basically what we have here is this is a new position from Macomb Community Action, the amount of $77,000 that would be 100% funded by general fund. I understand based on what Ernest said earlier in regards to going out for grants and trying to get this compensated. My opinion, based on where we're at here in the numbers and trying to balance this, obviously there are needs in the Macomb Community Action, which we just supported a minute ago. I just think in regards to this item, I think if we can go out for the grant, hopefully get that grant, that would suffice him. Worst case scenario, we can always come back to this board for an amendment if it's in dire need that they do need that position, or if there has to be something from this board to get that grant. So that's just my thought at this point. Any speakers on this item? Seeing Commissioner Nard?
Ernest, this is for Ernest? Ernest, what position is this for?
This is for the administrative coordinator position, which, again, at the start of the meeting, I mentioned that there's one administrative coordinator shared between community development as a division and weatherization as a division. And both of those are growing dramatically. Commissioner Sabatini is right. We are looking to get these covered under the grant funds, and that is our goal for the future. But this is a time-sensitive issue because, as much money as I receive in and bring into Macomb County to serve Macomb County residents, there's no one grant that funds for either of these positions, right? It's a dozen different grants between HUD and MISTA and the Department of Energy and the state of Michigan. So getting a budget amendment to cover some of that into the position requires lots of work.
Yeah.
And, this was simply an urgent request as we're seeing a dramatic increase in both weatherization through the federal funding and through our community development project, through our home funding. We just need one administrative coordinator for each of those rather than one being shared by both of those. It has significant impacts for monitoring, for reporting, up to 15 years of monitoring for some of our HUD funds. So I do appreciate the sentiment that we could come back. However, this is a time-sensitive issue. If we do get this covered by grant funds, I will come back to let you know that we don't need the full $77,000.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Okay,
thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to point out, I think there's about 3 items on this list where we have indicated to department heads, if this happens or that happens, you can come back to us and look for a budget amendment. Then we will be saying to them, why are you keep coming back to us asking for budget amendments, and why is it in your budget? They're going north and south with their heads back there. So I just want to put this on the record. We are the ones that are suggesting to them to come back to us at a later date seeking a budget amendment if XYZ happens. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat on webinars on a number of grants, not anything to do with this, Macomb Community Action, but in all those grants, you always got a certain percentage of the grant that you could use for administration. These grants aren't like that you can use some of the grant money for administration?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner. Again, not all of them have different thresholds for administration. And part of this is due to the changing support from a broader fiscal team beyond just MCA. And I know Steve can speak to that, about the capacities needed from all of the county staff, including the finance department, to help us manage and draw down expenses and get reimbursements and track vendors and make sure we're auditing the supplies and then participate in programmatic audits from the state of Michigan. So it's a little more complicated to say one grant has a certain threshold for staff to manage and monitor it. And, we're simply behind the curve here. When one grant goes up, you might not have enough incremental, funding to get a fixed increase, right? A staff increase isn't a variable increase, it's a fixed step increase. And so when we get one step, we get another step, eventually there's a tipping point. And again, we're simply looking to have one administrative coordinator for each of those, where right now they're sharing them and they're both growing dramatically. It is our hope that through those dozen different grant sources, we will be able to work that into the grant funds. But having a dozen different budget amendments takes a long time. It's my fear that it'd be 6 months until we get those and get this position in, which, is needed immediately.
I'm not 100% sure I heard the answer to my question there. How many of your grants do allow funds for administration?
Oh, almost all of them, yes.
Almost all of them. Okay, so you are getting currently, in the grants that you have, you are currently getting some funding for administration.
Yes, and that's differentiated between service delivery activities versus overall administration.
Right, and you would anticipate those funds to come with future grants also?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
This is not a request for $77,000 going forward. This is an urgent need today as a business imperative, which we plan on absorbing through those grants going forward.
Okay, so you're anticipating that you won't actually spend all of this if you get it?
I'm anticipating that through the many different fiscal years and grant cycles we manage, we will begin to build this new position in so that they have the capacity they need. It would be my aspiration that we don't need the full 77, that we start to request budget amendments to our federal and state grants to provide additional support for this type of an administrative coordinator position. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, seeing no other speakers on this item, please vote.
Motion passes 11-2. Commissioners Haw and Nard voting no.
Okay, next item, creation of a restricted fund dedicated to Martha T. Berry facility improvements to be spent after a new JOA in the amount of $2 million.
I'd like to make that motion, Chair.
Okay, made by Zinner, supported by Wallace. Commissioner Zinner, would you like to speak?
We really, Kevin has spoken with us several times in explaining his needs. He actually has more needs, but this will get him through one of the major points that he really, to an area that he really has to have. So this is, I hope that the commissioners will support this. Thank you.
So Commissioner, just to be clear, I know earlier we moved $1 million from the capital outlay expenditures, and this would be theoretically to match that and for a total of $2 million in a restricted fund?
Correct, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, because now I'm more confused. I thought it was the $1 million that was being moved along with items 4, 5, and 7, and 6, of which only 6 went through. So if this is the amount that's going to be changed, I was going to suggest that the motion maker make it 1.1 million, because 4, 5, and 7 failed. Number 6 did go through, which leaves us the 100,000 plus the 1 million. Is that, I'm speaking accurately, am I not?
I think the Commissioner's in, correct me if I'm wrong, your intention here is to get $2 million in total in this fund.
Yes.
So it's only $1 million increase?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that correct, Steve? Do your numbers match ours?
He wants it.
Kevin, hold on one second.
Again, my understanding is you're reducing capital outlay or contributions to the capital plan on line 12 by $1 million, and then you want to basically create a $2 million appropriation to Martha T. Berry. So the net effect is additional $1 million of expense.
Correct. Okay.
Okay, since I still have the floor, everything else we've done on the spreadsheet has been the amount that we've changed, not the amount we're getting to. And on this one, you're saying the opposite.
That's what I'm trying to decipher if this is the correct amount, Commissioner.
Okay, because what my thoughts were is that we were initially aiming for an additional 2 million, but because 4, 5, and 7 failed, we only have 1.1 million to balance the budget available. So it'd be 1.1 on top of the one that the executive proposed. That's the way I read it.
So the difference would be the 900,000?
No, it'd be 1.1 because 900,000 failed items 4, 5, and 7. So we have the executive proposal and then the change, not at 2 million, but a change of 1.1 on top of the one that the executive proposed.
Okay, I got.
Because that falls in line with the same methodology of all the other items that we had on the spreadsheet.
I agree.
Okay. So my request would be for the motion maker to change it to 1.1 million.
So we're adding the 1.1 million? Is that what we're doing?
That would be my request because we don't have the 2 million to add.
We lost that. Gee, that's great.
So it'd be the proposed by the executive plus 1.1 million more.
Oh, so it does end up being 2.
It goes to 2.1
Makes
total.
me very much happier.
Commissioner, I think she's trying to get to 2, so that's why I'm thinking, maybe she's thinking it's $1 million instead of 1.1 million.
Yes, I get. So we,
That's fair. I just want to make sure
Yep.
it's not 2 million on top of the one proposed.
Correct.
Because we don't have it.
Commissioner Zinner, that's adequate?
yeah, I understand. So
Okay. So it is $1 million. Kevin?
Well, I'm confused too, because but I thank you for that. What I do ask. Yeah.
Thank you and good night.
Yes. Yeah, I want to say thank you very much for how thoughtful everybody was on this. I know it's been a lot of hard work, but it does actually 2 things. It makes sure that we have enough money for our HVAC system, but more than that, it establishes a restricted fund, so that $2 million is going to end up either being in the bank or in your building. And because you are starting in that way, that money is going to stay in the community. And I'll be able to continue to add and invest in that restricted fund in a way that will allow us to support Martha DeBerry forever. What I would ask is that you change it from a new JOA to an amended JOA, because the implication is that you're going to end the other joint operating agreement. And there are some implications
Point
legally
of order,
in that.
Mr. Chairman. There's been no discussion about a JOA in this budget amendment. This is simply numbers.
Oh, correct. It was in the motion. Yeah.
It wasn't an amendment.
In the budget amendment.
Well,
Yeah.
it wasn't said.
It wasn't in the motion.
Yeah,
It wasn't specifically in the motion.
I'm glad I didn't hear it. I'll see you later.
Thank you.
You were doing fine. That was a good move.
Commissioner Ha?
Well, that was the point I was going to make.
Your mic, Commissioner.
Motion did not include.
Your mic.
Thanks. That was the point I was going to make. The motion did not include anything dealing with the JOA, so there is no discussion on the JOA because it wasn't part of the motion. I wanted to get the chair's concurrence with that.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Barb.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. A couple things. 4, 5, and 7 were not tied to 23. They were not brought up with regard to 13, and they weren't brought up in 19 and 20 and 21. They were just brought up on 23. And there's nothing in this amendment schedule that indicates that they are tied to it. But we can't just put 1 million or 1.1 million in there. We have removed $1 million for him to use. If we put 1.1 million in here, we've given him 100,000 more than what was already in the budget. No more. Because this is a new restricted fund that's being created. This fund starts at 0. So if we put 1.1 million in there and we took $1 million away from him, he net gains 100,000. Am I correct, Steve? I am correct. You would have to put 2 million in this budget for this budget to be 2 million. I recognize what you're saying is you're saying all these other cuts didn't happen, therefore we're spending more than we're not ending up, we're spending more than the county exec presented us. That would be correct, but there was nothing in these budget amendments that tied them all together. So, and with respect to Martha T., the reason I'm going to support this, and it's well known with administration, is if Martha T. doesn't survive, we take on their legacy costs, which is going to ultimately cost us a lot more than keeping Martha T. up and running, on top of the fact that it provides a valuable service to a very vulnerable community in Macomb County. But I think it benefits the county to keep them alive as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo what Commissioner Kleinfeld just said, but I'm going to put it slightly differently. Line item 12 and line item 23 are not related directly. Changing one does not necessarily have any impact on the other. And I would just like to get a chair, where do we stand with the amount on 23 that's in the motion?
Currently, it's at $1 million.
1 million? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you. I had the same question, but I'm not sure that clarified it for me. Are we adding $1 million from the proposed budget? Because as GAOA wasn't mentioned, I don't think the restricted fund was mentioned in the motion either. So are we adding $1 million to the budget? Or are we doing a total of $2 million in a restricted fund? So I know what I'm voting on.
Per what I'm reading, the words are getting smaller. It's creation of restricted fund dedicated to Martha T. Berry facility improvements. So Commissioner Zinner originally made that for $2 million, and it was adjusted back to $1 million. That's where we're currently at.
That's on top of the budget from the executive, correct? It's an additional $1 million, not a total of $1 million.
I'm seeing this as, Commissioner Zinner, is this, you're trying to get $2 million exactly into this special revenue fund that is restricted to those improvements?
Chair, point of order, the restricted fund doesn't exist, so its starting balance is 0. So if we add $1 million to it, it's $1 million.
Correct. That's what I'm
So
trying to
it'd be
get to.
two different amounts, the amount that the executive proposed plus $1 million in the restricted fund.
The executive
And
and
that's
this are
how we're
two
voting.
different categories.
Well, the executive didn't propose it in this restricted fund. The executive, it was included in the capital outlay expenditures. And that was amendment number 11, which did, I'm sorry, 12, that did pass to not include it in the capital outlay. If that makes sense.
I think I got it. So we're voting on $2 million in the restricted fund, and the proposed amount from the executive doesn't exist based on this amendment. Well, the combination of this and the other one. Got it. Thank you.
Yes. I think that concurs with what Commissioner Kleinfeld was trying to say. Is that correct, Commissioner?
Yes, and I just wanted to clarify with regard to what Commissioner Van Sickle said. When that $1 million was up to be taken out, it was said at this table that it was being moved down to that restricted island. So they were connected at that time. So, yeah, think of it this way. The $1 million just went back into the general fund. We're putting $2 million in here. That million is an extra million in the general fund. It's going in with another million. So it really needs to be, and it's not a 1.1 or anything else. It's just a $2 million vote amendment to create a restricted fund and to put $2 million in it.
And that was the original motion by Commissioner Sitter.
Are we sure we're clear on that?
I think we've got it down.
Do I need to word anything differently?
If you'd like to amend it back to
No,
2 million,
I
that would be
don't want
appreciated.
to. I'm asking you if I need to.
Yes, you would need to amend it to 2 million.
Well, that's what I had written down here. To the restricted fund?
Commissioner
No, I thought
Kleinfeld, are you done? Any other questions?
No, I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I see names flying on my screen here. So Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. So where do we stand now exactly? Chair, would you summarize?
I was trying to figure that out, but I keep getting
Because
questions.
a minute
so I
ago,
don't-
you told me,
Kyle, do you have it
when
in
I
the
asked the same
spreadsheet?
question, you said it was 1 million on the table.
Are you asking where we're at as far as the budget goes?
No, well, I'm asking where we're at as far as this amendment and motion goes.
It would be $2 million.
Because a minute ago, on the same question, you said 1 million.
And I just clarified after the discussion, and I said it needs to be 2 million if we just clarified that.
Is that what the motion shows?
And Commissioner Zinner amended that.
Okay, thank you.
So it is $2 million in a restricted fund. Okay. Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. Would it be possible to introduce a second amendment that reduces the non-departmental capital outlay expenditures from 1 million to 2 million or 1.9 million so that we are balanced?
We had an amendment earlier, which was 11, that actually you made, Commissioner, for 123,000 that was supported. Theoretically, that could be the difference.
Because the thing about my understanding of the capital outlay funds is money that's transferred over to the capital outlays, which we as the board have absolutely no say on how that money is spent, in addition to the ARPA funds that have been moved over. So this fund, the 10.7 million that had been recommended by the executive, is a transfer from the general fund over to the capital outlay fund. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but this amount is not going to be spent next year. It is spent over time, correctly, and it could change.
The 2 million?
No, the capital outlay,
So
the transfer of the
line-
10.7.
So the line item you're talking about, that reduction of $123,000, as well as the $1 million reduction to Martha T. Berry. Those dollars, well, I think there's two different things going on there. This is my interpretation. So the 123,000 is either going to reduce what we contribute to the capital plan, or it reduces what we spend on vehicles and furniture.
Mhm.
There's two different things going on there.
You
There's
guys you have to figure that out, right? What you cut, because
There's 123,000 coming out
Yeah.
of there. So
Yes.
there's a certain set of projects on the capital improvement plan. I think there's $9 million, call it $9 million for ease of that conversation, being contributed to the capital improvement fund for projects. So I take a little exception when you say we have no control of what gets spent out there, only because before that money's transferred to the capital improvement fund, the contracts come here to the board.
I get
Out
that
of the
part.
general fund.
Yes.
So once it's over in the project fund, that's all upon the administration to spend correctly. You get updates on that, on the quarterly reports and so on. Same thing probably should happen with this $2 million. Instead of $1 million being built into the capital plan, it should just be $2 million, if that's what the intention is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the contribution to.
I think that would make sense because if I remember correctly, Kevin's presentation, weren't you short? But it was it was like a $4 million
Right.
request. And so we're essentially, this $1.1 million is not getting us anywhere.
And I think
Other than maybe a HVAC.
And whether the $2 million would be spent in 2023, over the course of 2023 or 2024, depends on how his project advance. I know one of the ones he's on the top of his list is replacement of the HVAC system. So I think the idea would be we would contribute that money, and he wants to put it in basically a sinking fund, as I understand.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chair.
Okay, before we take another question here, Kyle's computer died, by the way. So he's trying to do this manually. Where are we at right now budgetarily before we vote on this?
So I have a savings of $428,115 without the $2 million, since that has not been voted on yet.
That was 428,115.
Correct, that's what I have. I'm welcome to critiques.
Okay, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Commissioner Song was going to make another amendment to try to balance this, but what is the last date that we can comfortably transmit this to the county executive? We've set the deadline for Wednesday, and I get that. But now we're going to start throwing out amendments without trying to balance it on the fly, and I think that's probably not our best case scenario. Which, by the way, I don't necessarily have the same sense that it has to match the executive's budget, because we've kind of been saying all year long, we want Martha T. to survive, we want Martha T. to survive. It's not necessarily our fault that wasn't put into the budget. So if that's it's not even an over expenditure, it's just that it wouldn't exactly match the county exec's budget. But if we want to match the county exec's budget, I don't know that we have to come up with amendments right now, just trying to figure it out, because I don't think we have to transmit it on Wednesday.
No, we don't, but we could. I mean, it is almost 6 o'clock, so as we're going through these, Chair Brown, did you want to speak?
No, certainly theoretically it's possible, but we're here now. We have one item we've got to balance. We're all under the same thinking, looking at this budget in great detail. I say there's no sense of delaying it, but I think Commissioner Sung was going down the right track of finding an amendment, and I think we should do that. We should take an amendment and balance it. It's not that far off.
Okay,
it's my
but
personal
wouldn't we vote on this one first, and then if we're off, start looking for amendments? Why are we tying the amendment to balance to this particular one? Is it because it was put last on the list? What if we put something else last on the list? It's pretty
doesn't make any
arbitrary
difference.
No,
that we're tying it to this particular.
Well, I have the floor, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
No, actually, I did.
He granted me leeway.
Commissioner Kleinfeld still has the floor, Chair. So but you were actually trying to suffice as far as what we were trying to figure this out. But Commissioner Kleinfeld, yes, this is the item here. We can take additional amendments after this one if we do want to try and balance it, as Commissioner Song was suggesting.
Thank you.
And I think there may be some more amendments coming. So this is still going. So I think we need to just keep getting through this list and try instead of solving the puzzle right this second.
Okay, thank you.
If that's fair.
That's what my question was.
Yep.
Thank you.
Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. Are you ordering pizza?
No, I'm not.
All right, so I think either way would be fine if we want to vote on this and then make that motion to amend the capital outlay afterwards. If we could do that, that's fine. I don't want to, like you said, Commissioner Kleinfeld, make amendments and try to balance on the fly, but this is the last item, and I think we could make it work. It sounds like we are all in support of Martha T. Berry. We would be off if, Kyle, if your number is correct, our amendment for the capital outlay would just be $471,000. Thank you, Chair.
We got Kyle Power, so he's Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Zong, I'd like the amount of the amendment to just bring us up to a zero with the, so if Kyle's numbers are right, $428,215, I'd like to just be that 2 million minus that would be the amount that we would decrease the capital outlay by.
So just to be exact, the amount would be $471,885.
1 million?
Well,
478?
we're not counting the 1.1 million.
Is that what we're on? We're on this.
Yeah,
We're on this item, yes.
Let's stick to the $2 million. This is where we're currently at. We'll get to that next. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I'll stick with the $2 million, but before we start trying to adjust to zero, I think Commissioner Kleinfeld made a good point. That's a goal, was to try and match the executive's budget. We don't have to match the executive's budget. If we make recommendations that are higher, it's up to him to veto those recommendations and send them back to the board. You know, we got a court ruling that said we would be responsible for the budget. Here we are. Careful what you ask for sometimes, you may get it. Here we are. Now we are the budgeters, not the executive. So yeah, we can take it out of, and I'll use capital outlay. We can also go back and reconfigure every one of the items that we just made decisions on. Don't look at me, Joe, I don't want to do that. I'm just saying we are responsible for the budget. The bottom line doesn't have to be zero with what the executive has recommended. Hell, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I thought we were going to give Kevin $4 million. Now it's 2. And how we got to that, Jeff, thank you very much for that clarification, because we spent 40 minutes trying to figure out what it was. And I, quite frankly, still don't know. So until I get a clarification of what line item 23 is, I'm hoping we don't discuss any other amendments beyond that until we get that resolved. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we have no more speakers on this item. And we have a motion on the floor to create this restricted fund dedicated to Martha T. Berry facility improvements for $2 million. Please vote.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, now.
Chair, if I may, that vote just shows your leadership and clarification on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any additional amendments that any commissioner would like to bring to the board right now? Commissioner Perna.
Thank you. We all love Macomb County. That's why we work here. And how do we make Macomb County attractive to new residents. And last week, I think it was last week, when the prosecutor's office made a presentation of the backlog that's going on in his office, I'd like to make an amendment that we authorize the prosecutor's office to hire some part-timers to clean up this backlog, providing there's funds available. And I hope I get a second on that. Again, part-timers, clean up the backlog, make this county more safe than what it is, and only if the funds are available.
Supported by Nard. Okay, Commissioner Perna, what is the amount?
I don't know what the amounts. Maybe prosecutor's office can address that?
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Perna and Commissioner Nard. I want to let everybody know it was put in the budget package that you should all received a copy of. That was, and it was on the front cover where we had all 8 of the amendments or ordinance changes. It was to create 8 budget neutral temporary positions, no cost to this county, because if it's within my budget and funded, the funds that were unspent in the personnel, we had I would call it this. It was because they said I didn't have the control numbers for employees that I could not get that money put into those positions. In my opinion, if the money has been lapsed into the budget within what this commissioners are doing tonight, I should have the right to spend that money in the way I see fit as a result of me being a countywide elect, having a countywide position that controls that budget exactly like the court did say. So I want no misunderstanding, disagreements. It's pretty straightforward. If the money wasn't used because of hiring practices that take 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I want to use that money if I need temporary people during that period of time. If the money's only there. If it's not there, then I can't do it. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
We still didn't get an amount. Did we get an amount, prosecutors? I'm sorry.
It's budget neutral. It would be 0, but it's creating under that ordinance change that I've given you, exactly like it's worded.
And how many do you need?
I said 8. That's what we asked for last time because that was given by finance that said that the money was available. All you need to do is go tell HR to post. Because I didn't have the control numbers, they told me I couldn't post. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
First of all, could we have HR come up for just a second? Also, he's saying it's budget neutral, and I'm wondering if he's using the excess money from this budget to roll over, or if he expects it to be in next year's. The money would be in next year's budget.
That is correct, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
And I wasn't sure which one of you guys to ask. That's why I just generally said HR and figured I'd leave it up to you. So what happened on your end?
As to why the positions weren't approved?
Yes. Why he couldn't fill them if he had the funds in his budget?
Yeah, I will have to ask Andy to step up on that one.
Nice try, Andrew.
Trying to get out and keep pulling them back.
Smart move, Carl. The positions were not appropriated within the budget from last year, and there is a specific statute right on point that the prosecutor is well aware of that say that the Board of Commissioners has the opportunity to appropriate heads one time per year. It says Board of Supervisors, I think, because it's an antiquated law, but it says one time per year at their annual meeting. That's been Prosecutor Lucido and I have gone over that time and time again. He does not like the answer, and I understand that. He gets to advocate for his department, and I presume that's what he's doing here.
But hasn't every budget, haven't you guys had the freedom if you have money into the budget? As a matter of fact, I think you could even move money as long as it was in one budget from one line item to another. And if he has it in personnel, haven't you guys had the freedom to use the money if you had it in there the way that you need to? So if you had a full-time position in there, but you weren't filling it, and what you really needed was 2 part-timers, haven't you always had that? And haven't you acted upon that authority?
Yeah, as I said, the statute is very specific. Each countywide elected official has a different statute when it comes to their authority. And there's a very specific statute on point for the prosecutor's office that talks about 4 positions, I believe. APAs, investigators, a type of clerical, and then like any other stenographers, I believe, and then any other clerical, I think is what the terms are there. And it talks about the individuals being identified, the positions being identified 1 time per year, presumably at the budget. So that is based on all of the things that happened during the last budget cycle. We wanted to stick very close to that statute so that we were staying within what the statute was, which is what Prosecutor Lucido argued during that term.
He didn't make the request when the budget was submitted, but that's how he would like to do it this year. Is it your opinion that this is the 1 time a year we can do it?
I would agree with you on that, yes.
So then this would be the time for us to do that. It's budget neutral, but we're actually voting on positions instead of, and I don't know how to do that because it's not a budget amendment. And since you're the one that's telling us about this, would you aid us in how we should do this? Because it's not a budget amendment.
I don't know that you can create positions that don't have funding behind them. I just don't know. That's not what I do.
I'm not asking for funding. I'm asking for the petition control numbers exactly like he just said, so that he now has the authority conferred to him by what he considers the law. I would be more than happy just to have that be, stipulated to, that he agrees that I come here, this is the time, and that you have the authority to put that without any budget appropriation, it's called. Just the fact that the positions now have been solidified, and if I need them, they're there to do my job.
Right, and we are doing budget amendments right now, and I want you, since you have raised this law and have made it an issue and haven't communicated it to us, facilitate our ability to do that. Should it be on tomorrow's agenda, and should it be an ordinance saying that he has 8 part-timers? What is it that we need to do? Because it's not a budget amendment. And I know if we approve what he's saying without any writing, then what's going to happen is we're going to be told we didn't do it correctly. So I want to make sure we're given the instruction on how to do this correctly.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I don't know that that's my place to give you guys instruction on how to do something like that. I just don't know that that's my place. I don't know that you can create positions without funding behind them. I don't know that. I don't believe that you can, but I don't know that for certain.
He's saying there's money in there, there's funding for it.
That's not what I heard.
No.
Sorry.
The issue is when I do have the money there, but the positions weren't created, then I can't fill the positions. Does everybody understand that? So if I don't have the positions available.
Yes, but there's a specific reason for that. And the reason is if you have extra money because it took a while to hire somebody, and you create positions that then they go into the next budget. And what happens in the next budget is you still have this position and you have these positions. It's a yearly expense. That comes back every year. It's not a one-time expenditure. That would be the reason for that, correct?
These are temporary, part-time that would conclude at the end of the year. I'd have to come back or leave the position control numbers so that they're available annually only if the prosecutor's office has money that is still available in the new budget cycle. I know the money comes back. We're putting back over $500,000 plus $250,000 what we brought in this last year.
Okay, so why don't we have Pete or John, if John would do it, and I'm guessing he's not going to get involved, Pete, facilitate what it is we need to do and bring it back at another meeting as opposed to voting.
I have it already in the budget package. It's part of the ordinance. It says it right there verbatim. I just want that approved. It's all, I gave everybody, it's about this much paper. I wanted it emailed and I know it went out, but I want to make darn sure this year that that information is in your hands and has been in your hands for 2 weeks. Spent a lot of time on it. I want to make sure that we have everything in order in the prosecutor's office, as you well know, commissioners, so that I don't have to come back. It will be just like Mr. Schmiegel said. Once the money has been looked at that it's available, then I can go post those jobs. They end at the end of the year. That's why it says temporary. They're not permanent jobs. There is no legacy costs. It's like getting temporary help like the clerk's office got this last year, or any other office when they can post, as long as Mr. Schmiegel, who's here, says that there's money available. Is that right,
Okay.
Mr. Schmiegel?
All right, so it's not a budget amendment, it's an ordinance amendment. All right.
It is an ordinance amendment. That's exactly what it is.
I'm not certain that the clerk's office had temporary help this year. Just to be clear, temporary and part-time are different for the county. Temporary, part-time are permanent positions that stay within an office. Temporary are temporary, as the name connotes, I guess. Also, we were talking about a backlog here of cases. I've got some numbers here. In 2018, there was 100.
Wait a minute.
Excuse me, Pete, I'm speaking.
This is not
In
about that. It's about
2018, there were
having this
111.
availability.
There were 111 trials at our circuit court, criminal trials. 2019, there were 117 trials. 2020, as you would expect, they went down to 25 trials. 2021, there were 44 trials, less than half of what we had in 2019. This year through June, we had about 24 trials, so we're trending again, less than half of the number of trials that we had in 2019. So I don't know where the backlog is.
Okay, and I'm not even worried about that.
Thank you.
I was just trying to find out process, and I'm gonna leave it to the chair to figure that process out, is what I'm gonna do.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Perna, so since this is not technically a budget amendment, it's, I guess it's part of the ordinance theoretically, correct? There's no amendment to be made through this motion that you're trying to get passed, if that makes sense.
Well, this is going for next year. This is not an amendment for this year. This is going for next year, that if there's a vacancy and the money has not been used, and I have to ask the prosecutor, how much money was left on the table this year that you couldn't fill positions that was already in your budget?
$500,000 right now, plus $250 that was brought in by the prosecutor's office by billing, more than any other year. And what's happened here is, when I did come to this board, and that's why they are a part of this year's budget, I couldn't get it filled according to the executive's office because there was no positions that were made available through the annual budget, they told me. Okay? That's why I'm here now. He stipulated basically too that I have the authority by coming here annually, and I'm doing it now. And I asked for 8. This is the packet one. Laid them all out. Thanks, Harold. And Commissioner, I really do need this because I don't want to have this same dialogue. If it becomes available, the money's there, I can ask the finance, show the money, and then I can ask the HR department to post the jobs.
But the prosecutor and Commissioner Perna, this is specific to the 2023 budget.
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay. So
we're not giving him any more money than what he already has.
right. So what I'm saying, though, this is not a budget amendment in here. This needs to be stated. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chair. This needs to be in the ordinance. We have counsel here too. Is that correct? We've got our counsel,
Counsel,
court
please.
counsel.
Pete Webster.
Pete, could you address that? Is that correct?
This was part of the amendment, though, that I offered as a result of what has happened in 2022.
Where you're talking about positions for the ensuing fiscal year, it needs to be in your appropriations ordinance, and you also need a companion resolution because it attends to the technical issue in the statute. The statute's an old statute. But to answer your question, the answer is yes, it needs to be in the ordinance. It's for the ensuing fiscal year.
Okay, Pete, so then that would be on the next item here when we get to the ordinance. We can address it at that point, correct?
Got to do both. According to what I have in my offer, if you will, when I gave all the amendments that I wanted, it said that this was one of it, and yes, it is an annual appropriation 2023 to create the budget neutral temporary positions. And it goes on, but this is the language I used. It is right on point. It addresses the things that I need to have so that I don't have to deal with this anymore.
But it's part of the ordinance.
Part of the ordinance.
Okay.
So,
But it's also a part of what you're acting on now, the budget.
But we don't have a dollar amount for the actual amendment. That's why it can't physically be a budget amendment.
we don't need a dollar amount.
We do not. That's why it needs to be put in the actual ordinance.
You can put zero until the money is available. I'm not spending any excess money unless it's available.
Okay, so maybe it's to simplify it this way. Let's say it's February now, and somebody left your office, and you need to have personnel post a notice, and that may take a month or 2 months for that position to be filled.
That's right.
Meanwhile, that money that's earmarked for that individual is in your budget unused. Am I correct?
100%.
So what he's asking for is that if the money's in his budget and he had a termination, let him hire some part-timers to eliminate any backlog or any assistance that he may need. We're not giving him any more dollars.
Currently,
already were approved.
Not to interrupt, but currently, if I don't have the money in the account, there's a hierarchy of how this works. It first has to go and get approval from finance. Finance says the money's available. Then they ship it to HR. HR says that we can post. It didn't happen that way. Even though finance had the money, I couldn't post because there was no employee, if you will, numbers, they call it.
Okay, we got some questions. So, Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you. I don't think the debate on each individual might be whether you approve of the appropriation or not, but it's really going back to Commissioner Kleinfeld on the logistics of doing it. My understanding, this is not budget neutral. Just because you had the money in the 2022 budget that wasn't used, that all gets wiped away and thrown back into the general budget. If this is for 2023, to be in the budget, which is what we're doing right now, it needs to have an amount. If you don't want to put a number on it, you can't put it in the budget. It's as plain as day. That's how budgeting works. Now, on the other hand, if you want to put in the ordinance, which is the next item, you can do it without a budget number. So I think that'll solve your problem.
Okay, fine. As long as it solves the problem and the board's happy, I'll be happy too.
That's what I was trying to get to as well, Commissioner Farrington. Commissioner Zinner.
I was just going to say he needs these position control numbers, but if there's a way to go without it, then everybody's happy. Thank you.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. I'd like to hear what our counsel has to say. Looks like he wants to say something.
Almost right.
I would just identify, with respect to setting the salary or the compensation for the positions, under the statute, which has been a controverted issue, is how it's been interpreted. The statute does provide, not only does the Board of Supervisors, now Board of Commissioners, identify the persons necessary, but also is to identify the salary for the positions. So it would be my view that you would want to identify the corresponding compensation from a budget and appropriations perspective. If it's not spent, it's not spent. If they're not hired, you're not going to spend it. But to promote compliance with the statute, under Section 31, you identify that they're necessary. Under Section 34, it says that you shall identify the salary. So I wanted to point that out.
Thank you. So from that point of view, I'd like to suggest we add eight positions in and a token $1,000 or $2,000 or something. So we don't really affect the overall budget that much, but it's there as a placeholder. And if the prosecutor can fund it through grants and we don't have to increase that, all the much better. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Pete, could you speak to that, what he just said?
I apologize. I appreciate that the placeholder concept is not contemplated by the statute. The statute says you have to set the salary. And so if you say the salary is a placeholder of 1,000, that's what it is. Now, you would then think perhaps we could amend that into the future, but I would just point out that Mr. McKinnon had identified, again, this is old statutory language from 1925. It says that you have to set this at your regular annual meeting is the phrase that's used. And so I appreciate that one view is that it's this right now is part of an annual regular meeting through the budget process. Some may also say that it would be at your annual organizational meeting. And so I had mentioned that in my view, you would want to include whatever the compensation is being asked for and recommended. Now, if that's the policy of the board to proceed, to do that in the appropriations ordinance, you should also pass a companion resolution now, and I say that because the statute specifically says by resolution, not by ordinance, to avoid all confusion, if that's the policy of the board, and to address this concept of whether it's now at the budget or at your annual organizational meeting. On the resolution portion, belt and suspenders, I would do it both. This is a relatively controverted issue, and so if the policy is to adopt or to promote these positions of the 8 part-timers, establish them now as being necessary, establish what the salary is in your ordinance and in the resolution.
Well, that's a bit of a pickle, because if we're establishing that they're necessary, then we can't also establish that he's not to fulfill them unless he has money in his budget, making it budget neutral. And everything that Pete said, I don't think we should attempt to accomplish tonight, because if we do that, we're 100% going to make it a hot mess. I'm sure of that.
I would agree.
Thank you.
So right now, there is no budget amendment. So are there, Commissioner Perna, there's no actual amendment that you're making with an actual dollar amount relative to this right now. So what you're describing will be in the next item under the ordinance.
The fact that they haven't established salaries yet.
No, hold on, Prosecutor. Commissioner Perna?
I hear what corporate counsel said, but I don't believe that's 100% accurate.
The salaries, Mr. Chairman, if they haven't established any salaries.
Hold on, Prosecutor. Commissioner Perna, that's our independent counsel. That's
Right.
not corp counsel. So he works for the board. That's what his interpretation is.
I take that back. I thought there was.
So he works for us.
So I need corporation counsel to, independent counsel. You're saying that the monies that are unused during 2022 could have never been used unless there was an employee that was hired for the unused portions that he did not use. Going forward to 2023, if we pass an amendment tonight or the next item, that if he has a vacancy in sometime during 2023, you're saying that he cannot fill that position because he has dollars still available. Is that what you're saying?
Commissioner, if I may, during the last fiscal year, there was controversy over the authority to fill the positions, and that it was pointed out that the executive had a view, and I'm just going to state this generally, that certain positions weren't necessary and were not going to be filled or posted in a general sense. and to avoid all confusion and to address some concerns that were raised, that there would, if you try to do what you outlined, one might foresee an objection from the executive's department, that what we saw last year, saying you can't, there's no authority for that, so I'm not going to do it. To avoid that, if it is the board's policy that you want to have this available and you want to move forward with the positions that have been requested, and including the 8, it would be my recommendation that you include that in the current year budget and in the current appropriations ordinance, and then pass a resolution to that effect. And if they're filled, and you can move forward with that, and there would be no real world objection or reason not to move forward that from the executive's perspective. So that's my view, and that whether they need to be absolutely necessary, perhaps, is a different issue. If the board views that, as of today, where you believe as a matter of policy these are appropriate positions to fill and to move forward on for the next fiscal year, now's the time to address it.
Do we address it with an amendment, or do we address it with a policy?
It would be in the next item for the ordinance,
Will that cover
under
it?
the appropriations ordinance, which we'd have to get language, and we don't have that language available.
I beg your pardon, Mr.
Can you
Chairman.
use the language or an indication of what the language should be?
Yeah, if I may, I had, in conjunction with staff, had prepared a resolution, which is a companion to the amendment to the ordinance, which identified all of the positions that had previously been discussed. I would need to double check to see if it included the 8 part-time positions. I don't think it does. And so that would just be added to this, to the draft resolution. And so you would identify what the positions were for, that they were either assistant prosecuting attorneys, investigating officers, and or clerks, stenographers, or other clerical.
But when you say, what if you didn't need 8? What if you only needed 2? And what if another department needed an employee to fill a vacancy? They're not going to be able to fill that vacancy either, then, unless we make a change now.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Well, not exactly, if I may. The statute that we're grappling with is from 1925 relative to prosecutors only. And then if the board deems that these positions are quote unquote necessary under the statute, you can move forward with that.
So this issue really is only with the prosecutor's office?
Yes, sir.
No other departments?
Yes, Commissioner. No question about it.
Well, I think we know what the right decision should be. If there's a vacancy and he's got the money, unused funds, and his office can run more efficiently, then we should consider it. The policy, not the amendment.
The policy. So let's move. Commissioner Van Sickle, do you have a quick question?
I believe so. Does this apply to direct temporary employees, and does it also apply to contract labor type of temporary employees, such as in the secretarial world, you'd call it a Kelly girl?
I wouldn't call it that, but I would say, yeah, I mean, it's not appropriate, but what I would say is that it is pertinent only to the positions that are within the prosecutor's statute. I think it's one of the things that the prosecutor and I can agree on. It's just those enumerated positions within the statute. So it's assistant prosecutors, it is stenographers, it is prosecutor investigators, and then other clerical positions. There's another little something in there that I can't remember, but that's stenographers, right? So I don't know.
If we don't clarify this issue, it's going to be forever.
So can he hire contract labor to do a different name position?
Contracts go through the board, go through the executive's office.
Thank you. Can he hire contract labor through the executive's office?
He cannot unless the executive's office approves it.
Okay, but they would fall outside of this ordinance.
Again, it's not an ordinance, it's a state statute. So those 4 positions, let's call them 4, those 4 positions are the ones that are within the state statute. So there's other positions throughout the county and a few other positions within the prosecutor's office that are not in that statute.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so this not being an actual budget amendment, this would be a revision to the ordinance, which we can get the language and we can bring that up in the next, well, we'll get to it the next item. So are there any other amendments for the budget?
Yes, Chair.
Commissioner Song.
I would like to propose an amendment to decrease the capital outlay expenditures $1,030,895. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Commissioner, do you want to speak to that briefly, just what that number is for?
Sure. So the executive's recommended original budget for the capital outlay was at $10.7 million. We made a reduction of $1 million, number 12, and a reduction number 11 for $123,000 in order for us to create this Martha T. Berry restricted fund. And to stay balanced, although Commissioner Hall, I know you're going to say that we don't need to do that, but that's the recommendation in order for us to be balanced.
Commissioner Hall.
She's right about that. We certainly don't need to do this. Secondly, we haven't heard the impact that doing this has on the other departments. And I thought when we explained the procedure earlier, you said there still was going to be the opportunity for amendments as we move forward. So here we are at the, almost fourth hour. I don't know the impact of that. I don't know the impact of the next item we're going to talk about. Rushing things has taught us haste makes waste, and I think that's what we're playing with here, but I'm
Chair,
just
if I
one
may.
vote. Thank you.
Chair, if I may.
You want to
Commissioner
debate this?
Kleinfeld. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Just the definition of the word balanced is if we have a huge fund equity, and we have had many years where we've tapped into the fund equity for a particular project or another project. This is a project, it's a one-time expenditure. You're still considered balanced. You have a balanced budget unless you go into a deficit, and we have a very healthy fund equity. Just wanted to clarify that. The question is, do you want your budget to match exactly the county executive's budget? And I don't know why that philosophy is something that we've adopted, because there may be projects that we think need to be done, like Martha T., and we may agree with everything else in their budget. We shouldn't tie ourselves to having to cut something out of their budget because we agree with something else. Thank you.
Commissioner Song, did you want to?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I understand what, both of you are saying, but the reality is this capital outlay fund is not something that we are really able to dictate or control or say, here's a project that we want to do. The money for the ARPA fund and many other dollars have been transferred over to this fund balance, and we have no say of it. You were the one that pointed that out, Commissioner Kleinfeld. And Commissioner Hall, you had recommended that if we were going to make a decrease that we find, or an increase that we find something to decrease. So this is a practice that we've done, and some folks might not like it, but I'm just going to say that we set the budget, and so if we have to take from the capital outlay fund, I think this project is important, that we need to do that, because this money will go to whatever, and we won't have a say on that. And you guys know how important Martha T. Berry is, so I hope you will support this amendment. This is not enough, though. I hope you guys know that. This $2 million is not going to sustain Martha T. Berry. This is a conversation we're going to have again, unfortunately. Unfortunately for you, Commissioner Kleinfeld and Commissioner Farrington, you guys won't be here to deal with that, but I would hope that you would support this so that we can be in a better position next year. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you. I am going to respond. The words dictate and control have been used quite frequently tonight. Under the ordinance, when a capital expenditure takes place, anything over $35,000 must be approved by this board. So we do have dictate and control. It's like Santa Claus is out there giving presents to everybody in the capital budget. That's not what this is. Secondly, and I did say if you take something out, put something in, so I do applaud you for making that recommendation, and we do set the budget. It's not about Martha T. Berry being important. Kevin knows that as it applies to me, and I know that, and so do you. So I explained that last week. We have a pie. We have prioritizations to make. We added money to the food bank program. We added money to Turning Point. These are priorities that this board has established. Do we need a balanced budget? Yes. Do we have to agree with the executive's recommendation? No. That's my point. It's not about whether or not I think Martha T. Berry is important, and I resent that being said. I have fought for them since day one, and he knows it. That's all I have.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, we have a motion on the floor to decrease the capital outlay expenditures by $1,030,895. Please vote.
Motion passes 9-4. Commissioners Haw, Kleinfeld, Romano, and Wallace voting no.
Okay. Commissioners will get all these final numbers with finance, with all these amendments, and then incorporate it into the ordinance. We do have the next item, which is the ordinance. So this is the ordinance 2022-08, fiscal year 0203, Comprehensive General Appropriations Ordinance. I need a motion to recommend this to full board.
So moved, Mr. Chair. Support.
Made by Kraft, supported by Farrington. Discussion? I don't see any speakers. This will be finalized with all the amendments that were already passed this evening and sent to full board, where they can also be amended at that point on Wednesday. Please vote.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, next item is a resolution 2022-9491, deeming prosecuting attorney positions necessary in fixing salaries of assistant prosecuting attorneys and other employees appointed by prosecuting attorney under Public Act 329 of 1925 as amended. I need a motion to recommend this to full board.
So move, Van Sickle.
Made by Van Sickle, supported by Nard. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Chair, what's the timeline on this one? It's not tied to the other. There's been a request to be able to look at that and review it from Assistant County Executive.
Great question. I don't have the answer. Pete?
Similar to what I had mentioned, the 1925 statute has this phrase that by resolution, the Board of Commissioners needs to establish the positions and set the salary. And so, and then it does reference the at a regular annual meeting language. And out of an abundance of caution, wearing belt-and suspenders. So this resolution, in my recommendation, should be commensurate or at the same time as the Appropriations Ordinance, same meeting, same process, same deadline. And in addition, you would want to consider having that again. I know it's redundant, but having it again at your annual organizational meeting so that there's no question and no dispute that you've complied with the state statute.
Somebody have to look hard to find this 1925 law?
Yes, someone had to look hard.
It's probably rarely used, would you assume, in other counties?
It became aware through the litigation that the board and the prosecutor and the executive had experienced over the last prior year.
Okay. All right. So you're suggesting that we do. Well, can we get it over to them for their review before Wednesday? Then.
Certainly.
I
mean,
don't see why not.
Yeah. And if I may, as a general comment to give it some context and for information from the Finance Department, I crafted the operative language by just identifying the statutes and saying, if it is the board's policy to proceed with this, I mean, it's your decision, this is what we're doing. And then I copied in the positions that were provided from a draft finance document. So I actually just cut and pasted in their listing of the assistant prosecuting attorneys, investigating officers, clerks, and stenographers. I did, to be clear, made one change that that they're all statutory positions pursuant to this statute.
My last question is, you did include the 6 part-time?
Yeah, as I had alluded to, and I just had a look over to staff here, they were not, because they were not included in what was provided from finance, and I don't know whether it's 6 or 8, or the discussion changed a little bit here this evening.
That might be my fault. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, I'm continuing my frustrations from last week with last-minute agenda items. This would have been great to read through. I looked at my agenda this morning, and I didn't see it there until I sat down in this seat. So the fact that it could have been even on tomorrow's agenda would have been super helpful considering all the work we've had to do today. So I just wanted to throw out more complaints. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Wallace?
I was going to take my name off because Commissioner Kraft pretty much said the same thing. I haven't looked over this. I mean, we just need more time before things like this are on the agenda. Just give us a little time to look over these things. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Chair Brown?
Thank you. Well, today we've looked at a lot of items at the last minute. We just got all these budget amendments today. I mean, it's the same thing as everything else, right? I mean, we've tried to move these things forward. This is part of this. It's recommended by council that it be inserted during this budget process. I have some questions about this because I too received this on short notice, and the question is, to the council, Ms. Webster, you come up. Could this be perceived as the Board of Commissioners setting salaries for the prosecutor's office, and would that get us into a conflict with the charter, that we're wandering into areas that we don't have authority?
The short answer is no.
No.
It's specifically authorized and actually required under the statute.
The numbers in the resolution, these came from our county finance department, correct?
They did, and as I mentioned, I took what finance had provided relative to these positions and just cut and pasted them into the draft for your consideration.
So the Board of Commissioners didn't make up these numbers. These came from the administration.
That is correct.
Okay. About this, making these statutory positions, how do we get out of making them not statutory? What if we decide at some point in the future that we've changed our mind, or these positions, we don't want these positions to be in the budget because, for whatever reason, the board decides?
If I may, there are 2 points. One, you set them every year. So if next year.
Okay, every year, okay.
Two, I think Commissioner Van Sickle had asked that of Mr. McKinnon. There can be other positions, but those would not be board-determined positions, and that you would need a consensus of the county executive to move forward with them. And the question specifically was about additional contract persons to assist, so that my point is that if you, as a matter of policy, want and believe that these positions should be there, and you want it to happen, and you wanted to ensure that they were going to happen, this is the way to do it. If you wanted to leave it to the discretion and the cooperation of, say in this instance, the prosecutor and the executive, you could do it another way, but this is the way which was required under the statute to make it happen.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Peter.
Commissioner Perna.
Counsel, I just want to make sure I understand what you said earlier.
Yes.
You're saying that we should not make a resolution at this meeting, make it at the organizational meeting in January.
No, I said both.
So we can make a resolution tonight or tomorrow and then reaffirm it in January.
That is correct. There is unclarity in the state statute. The statute says regular annual meeting. And what does that mean? And so to avoid any controversy over what that means, you heard from Mr. McKinnon, he thought it made a lot of sense to do that now as part of your annual budget and annual appropriations. I agree with that. And then to remove any doubt, it would be redundant or seemingly redundant, but you might as well do it again, can't hurt, at your annual organizational meeting.
Thank you.
Commissioner Song?
Thank you, Chair. So this resolution says that this is just a draft subject to change based on our final amendments. So does this, these positions in the salary, does that amount to the amendments that we made? Because it's still reflecting the recommended 12.8.
Yeah, it would need to be updated.
So will that be changed for?
This is just a draft.
Okay. My other question, I was wondering why we are doing this in particular for the prosecutor's office, because I think it's really important for us to pay our workforce, a higher salary, competitive benefits, but I think this could be applied to every department. And, I think HR should have the opportunity to look at it, because if we're going to pick and choose which departments we want to increase salaries, who's to say someone from Candace's office will quit, their position and come to work for the prosecutor, and vice versa. So I'm not seeing how this creates any kind of equity. And I'm just confused why we're just picking one, the prosecutor's office, and creating a resolution in particular for this department and not the clerk's office and not any other departments.
Pete, can you address that question?
Certainly. So one, the requirement is because of this old, almost century-old statute that uncovered a controverted issue, a controversy in the lawsuit between the prosecutor and the executive, and to avoid all dispute about enacting and appropriating the board's vision as to who and what are necessary and at what levels, this is the way to comply with that. I would point out, and the board had some significant discussion, what the board deems to be the appropriate salaries is going to be informed by the county's policies and your HR advice and all of the that support that you have will determine your view as to how you set this. The numbers that are here, I got from finance, and I understand, and someone else much more knowledgeable can speak to the fact that my understanding is they're undergoing negotiations with various groups, and these numbers may change, and someone can speak to how much it is, but setting the salary is required by state statute with respect to only the prosecutor under the statute. It's just a oddity, if you will, or an anachronism under the law.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld, you have first round.
I don't think I've spoken on this, but I can't remember.
Okay, go ahead. Well, Commissioner Zinner was on the board. Back on the board? No? Commissioner Kleinfeld, second round.
Okay, thank you. So it's kind of, it didn't need to be on this agenda, quite frankly. It's not tied to the budget in that way. It could have been on a month ago. It could have been on whenever we said our annual meeting is, but we all know that that's the organizational meeting. However, setting the salaries for everybody, which was the second thing that was said, is a huge concern to me because the county executive's department negotiates contracts with all of the unions. They have always set the salaries. I haven't always agreed with them on that, but I don't know that we would be setting the salaries for the other departments. And I'm going to be looking at this 1925 law. Thank you.
Commissioner Perna.
I just wanted to clarify the previous commissioners regarding that this resolution that we were going to pass tonight or next month or in January was nothing to do with salaries. This is only for clarification that if there's a vacancy in the prosecutor's office, that he had to be able to get part-time employees there using those funds that haven't been used. Am I correct in that, Counsel?
That was the last agenda item, wasn't it?
No.
To answer the commissioner's question, the state statute, MCL 49.34 says that the salary shall be fixed by the Board of Supervisors at its annual and regular meeting. So Section 34 talks about the salaries, and Section 31 talks about the positions.
But the resolution that we were going to consider today.
Turn your speaker on, Mr. Perna, please. Put your speaker on.
What we were discussing is not salaries. We were discussing the accessibility of unused funds in his department. We're not talking about the resolution to define salaries for the prosecutor's office.
So the current item right now is the resolution. Yeah. That's what we'll be voting on in a moment.
So the resolution is what we've been discussing now for the last half hour, is that the prosecutor's office, starting in 2023, can fill a vacancy, provide there's funds available within his budget. Am I correct to simplify that resolution?
No, you need another step here, and that is they need to be appropriated, and under the statute, you need to pass a resolution naming those positions and naming the salary. And the salary amounts should coincide with what's in the appropriations ordinance.
How would you determine the salaries, because you wouldn't know what the vacancies are going to be?
Salaries are set for vacant positions.
These are part-time employees now.
Salaries are, it's my understanding, someone more knowledgeable can speak to it, but salaries are set, or compensation is set for vacant positions frequently, is my understanding.
Through the prosecutor, does a stenographer and a clerk make the same compensation? No. So you don't know which positions you're filling until there's a vacancy. So it's hard for us to come out with a fixed dollar amount for an unknown vacancy, potentially.
I think if there are 8, or if there's a part-time position that you want to fill that position, you need to know, what are you going to post? How much is the salary? What's the compensation for that particular position? I think salaries for vacant positions are done frequently. They're budgeted and appropriated. They're just not filled.
So in our resolution, we would need to list every part-time compensation potentially that would have to be paid.
If there are 8, for example, the board has a consensus that that's what the policy they want to set forth, then you would want to list them. And in fact, in the draft resolution, the positions that were already identified, which included, by way of example, assistant prosecutors and investigators by position, the salary and wages for those are identified in what was provided by finance that I cut and pasted into.
Okay, so we just need to clarify the dollar amount for these 8 positions or whatever positions in the future are going to be.
Yeah, the number of positions that they're categorized as clerk, stenographer, other clerical, and what the compensation would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, motion on the floor. Please vote.
What is the motion on the floor?
It's the resolution. Yes, the resolution. Motion to recommend to full board.
Point of order, we have to plug some things in, right? So we're moving it to full board, but it's going to change just like the ordinance.
Correct. Correct.
People who want to go into politics or public service to learn about policy and becoming a better leader. It was a great program. I learned so much. I made lifelong friendships. Not only that, but every month we visited different parts of the state. So like we went to Traverse City, we went to Roscommon, we went to various parts of the state and learned about the local issues in those areas, as well as the geography of Michigan. We had someone from the Native American community come and present. And so it was a really wonderful experience, and I would recommend it to anyone who's thinking about going into politics. This would be the program to apply for, and I think that, I came out of it a much better person, and it was very beneficial to the people that elected me to be in office. So just wanted to share that. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that came out for the Mount Clemens Santa Parade. It was freezing, to say the least, but the kids loved the candy that we threw out, and they were so happy. And so I think it was worth it. I wish I had heated gloves and coats and everything else like Commissioner Haw had, but next time I'll be better prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, commissioners, I just want to say thank you. I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to everyone on this budget process. I know it. First of all, our staff puts in a lot of time. We put in a lot of time. All of our department heads, all of our staff, all the questions that we ask, all the requests that we want after the questions. It's lengthy. I know we're here past 7 o'clock here tonight, but this is why we're here. And I know it's a long process, and we still have work to do. We could take these budget amendments in one lump sum. I don't think that's the right way to handle it. I think individually, we have conversations, we deliberate, and we vote. And at the end of the day, this is where we're at tonight. So thank you for everyone. I know it was a little longer than I anticipated tonight, but we got through it, and we'll finish it all up hopefully here on Wednesday.
And I might add that you can go home tonight and be, thank God you didn't have 26 of us sitting around doing the same thing.
Jim did.
Now, Chair,
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Romano, supported by Zinner. Please vote.
See you all tomorrow.